I am Doom, Marvel. Chapter 1, Chapter 1, I am Doom. Ring ring ring. Hearing the familiar ring of my phone alarm, I slowly but surely opened my eyes. I then reached for my phone, lying on my nightstand, and then turned off the alarm. After I did, I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes before taking a look at the time, which upon doing so I felt a cold sweat start to run down my entire body. Since the time displayed on my phone was 7:45 a.m., and I had a final scheduled for today at 8 a.m. sharp. The final being for my last college course, which once I completed would allow me to finally grasp the doctorate I had been working towards earning for the past 10 years. From long hours of studying, to fighting to drag my ass out of bed and attend classes virtually during the COVID pandemic. All of that work was finally about to pay off. But now it might all be ruined. All since I couldn't set my alarm for the proper goddamn time. Because the teacher in charge of this final class I need to pass is a complete and utter hard ass. If you're even 1 minute late to class, she'll slam the door in your face and fail you without any hesitation. No questions asked. That's why I, and several other students, always arrived 10 minutes early to all her classes. It also might have something to do with the professor in charge being a sexy MILF, but that's a matter there is no time to discuss. Right now, I need to move. Jumping out of my bed, I quickly got dressed, gathered any and all materials I needed in my backpack, and then rushed out of my apartment like a madman, focusing on making it to campus and reaching Professor Victoria's classroom before the exam began. The former going to be the easy part, since my apartment is only a 5-minute walk from the campus. Stepping onto the university grounds, I picked up the pace of my running speed even further, ignoring the screaming in my legs and the pain in my chest as I did. Since this final was a big make or break moment for me, and nothing was going to keep me from getting my moment. As I continued running, I slipped my phone out of my pocket and took a quick look at the time, to see how much I had left. When I did, it read 7:55. Shit, I exclaimed. Only 5 minutes left before the final begins and I am locked out and get a big fat F on it. Realizing this, I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I then changed my running direction for a section of the university blocked off with yellow tape, for it was under construction, which is why no one was allowed to enter that section of the university. But I am going to do so, since it will allow me to reach my destination in time. I'll deal with the aftermath of the situation later. Right now, I have a test to pass. Reaching the yellow tape, I jumped over and entered the construction zone. I then started weaving through it, heading towards my destination, laying my eyes on it after only a minute of running through the construction zone. Yes, I exclaimed, putting a smile on my face. For I feel I'm going to make it. Though right after I did, I heard someone shout at me, "Hey, look out." Turning my head in the direction of the shout, which came from above me, I looked up, just in time to see several large metal beams falling and closing in on my location. Then before I even had time to process what I was seeing, or get out of the way of the beams, I suddenly found myself on the ground. The pile of beams atop me, as unimaginable pain assaulted every part of my body, and my vision started fading. All I could think was one thing. I hope my friend remembers the deal we made and erases my browser history. Oh, and also this. Fuck. My vision getting weaker by the second, I tried to hang on, hoping that maybe I would be rewarded with some small miracle. Then as if someone bitch slapped me in the face, that hope was shattered as I suddenly heard a cracking sound, and then before I knew it I was falling downward. The weight of the combined beams obviously having been too much for the sidewalk I was on to support. As I fell my body ended up twisted, and I found my gaze pointed directly to the ground where I would hit. Naturally I wanted to close my eyes since I didn't want what was about to happen, but my eyes didn't listen to me and instead stayed open. And the rest of my body no longer under my control. So with that I resigned myself to my impending fate. However, in the next second everything changed. Since just before I hit the ground, a giant black vortex opened up on the spot where I was going to land and swallowed me whole, leading to me finding myself falling through a black void of utter darkness. That was suddenly illuminated by an overpowering light. One that washed over everything, including me. I muttered, slowly but surely opening my eyes, which a second later I realized shouldn't have been possible, considering what I just went through. Unless it was all a dream? As I contemplated this, I suddenly found my mind assaulted by pain. Bringing my hands up to it, I held it and ground my teeth, working to endure the pain, as well as flashes of images inside of my very mind. Though as quickly as both the pain and images began, they stopped. Once they both did, I felt at peace, since I understood exactly what had happened to me. What happened was not some dream, or even a hallucination. I actually experienced that accident, and in the process lost my life, only to immediately find myself with a new one. Since those images that just flashed through my mind were not simply images. No, they were memories. The memories of the person I now was, which was none other than one of comics' greatest minds, and one of Marvel's most dangerous individuals ever, Victor Von Doom, who also goes by another name, Dr. Doom. A man who was one of my favorite comic book characters ever, despite the fact most of the time he was portrayed as a villain, though I always thought of Doom as more of an anti-hero, considering he did save the world and multiverse several times. Now I am that man. I am Doom. Upon realizing this, it brought a smile to my face, for now I shall become the greatest Doom there ever was. Yes, it is time for Doom to rise. Chapter 2, Chapter 2, Assessment and Execution. Doom. I am Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doom. Honestly, I still believe this to be true, yet I know it is A contradiction of course, but one not easily rectified. Yet if I am to live, survive, and thrive in this new reality I now find myself in, then I must rectify my feelings concerning this matter and fast. Otherwise they could lead to failures, which I cannot afford. Especially with all the plans and ideas I am currently creating in my mind, and will implement when I have the first opportunity. So on that note I inhaled and exhaled several times, using the breathing to center my thoughts and emotions. Then once I did so I began organizing the former while immersing myself in the latter. After close to 20 minutes of performing this activity I felt I had rectified any doubts I previously had. Now I have no issues in regards to the fact I am now Doom. So, on to the next thing. Getting out of my bed, since the original Victor was sleeping when the merging of our souls took place, I headed for the bathroom. Since I had business to take care of there, easily finding my way thanks to my new memories, courtesy of the original Victor, I entered the bathroom and then handled all business I needed to attend to inside of it. Once this was done I returned to my bedroom and dressed for the day. I then headed for the kitchen to make myself a hearty breakfast. Since I had many tasks I wanted to complete before the day was over with, and I needed the energy to complete them. Finishing up my bacon, eggs, pancakes, toast, and orange juice, I cleaned up the kitchen and then headed straight for my living room. Upon arriving I took a seat on the couch and then clasped my hands together, before fully diving into my new memories, so I could assess my current circumstances and then make moves to execute based upon them. As I sorted and examined my new memories I learned several things. First, currently I am 22 years old, my birthday being December 21st. The year of my birth having been 1980. That brings me to the second bit of information, the current year, which is 2002. Third, I have just graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with 3 PhDs to my name, the first being in materials science and engineering, the second being in physics, while my third and final PhD is in chemical engineering. Nice. Now I don't feel bitter about not earning my doctorate in my previous life, since having PhDs and being an official doctor here, with all the privileges and rights it allows me, more than makes up for it. Fourth, I know magic. Well, currently I am no master of the mystics arts, but I do know several spells. All thanks to the books left behind to the original Victor, known to me by my mother, the Romani sorcerer Cynthia von Doom. As I recalled memories of her I felt several emotions from both happiness and love to sadness. The same in regards to my father, Werner von Doom, both of whom seemed to have met their ends in the exact same way they did in the Earth 616 universe. Despite the fact that is not the Marvel universe I inhabit. No, based on what I know the Marvel universe I currently call home is based primarily on the MCU, given that Captain America is Chris Evans and Tony Stark is Robert Downey Jr. However, although this universe is based on the MCU it is not the MCU, given that I, and several other characters who were never featured in the films or the television shows exist here, like Norman Osborn, the CEO and founder of Oscorp Industries, who is the spitting image of Willem Dafoe, along with Reed Richards, who was my classmate during my recent time at MIT. I also recall talk of mutants, a Dr. Charles Xavier, Bolivar Trask, and even a Dr. Richard Parker in my new memories, along with an environmental scientist named Emily Osborn. So with that, on top of everything else, the Marvel universe I now inhabit is a combination of the MCU, the Tim Story Fantastic Four films, the X-Men Fox films, the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films, along with elements from the Insomniac Spider-Man game, and finally elements from the Marvel Earth 616 universe, which is not bad at all. I can definitely work with this. On another note, I am curious to see which version of Spider-Man will appear in this world, but I can sate my personal curiosity regarding that matter later. Right now I have more important matters that demand my full attention, the biggest at the moment being my home country Latveria, and freeing it from the rule of that despicable piece of shit Vladimir and the rest of his incompetent and ineffectual family. The Fortunov family better enjoy the time they have left in this world, for their days are numbered. So says Doom. A little more time passed before I finished completely reviewing my new memories. Once I did I began casting several mind-related spells, not only to help me organize my thoughts even further, but to also protect my mind from unwanted intrusion. Given that I now live in a world where telepaths and telepathic abilities are real, in hardly any time at all I finished the business related to my mind, having made it more secure than the world's foremost vaults. I've laid mental traps and several other surprises, so much so it would take either a world-class telepath, a cosmic being, or someone a lot of time on their hands to get into my head, but none ever shall. Now then, since my mind is secure, on to the next step. My first step to becoming the greatest Dr. Doom in my own eyes. Chapter 3, Magic. A/N, hey readers. Here is another new Doom chapter, but this will be the last one this week, since from now on I will only be posting chapters for this FIC on Tuesday and Friday. My main focus will be my Sunspot FIC. Also, if you want advanced chapters of this FIC, then go to my Patreon, where there are up to 5 advanced chapters of this story. Here is the link, patreon.com/arifuretaforever. Walking up to the doors of the New York Sanctum I knocked several times. I then stopped and began waiting, though I didn't have to wait long, since several seconds after I knocked the doors to the New York Sanctum opened and I was face to face with none other than its current master and caretaker, Daniel Drum. Looking at me, Drum attempted to be intimidating and said nothing as he scanned me with his gaze, but to me his intimidation was nothing. Ignoring it, I stared right back at him, not flinching even once, since it would be unbecoming of a future ruler to flinch from just this much. No, it will take a whole lot more to get a reaction out of me. Soon Master Drum finished looking me over. Then once he did, he spoke up. "How may I assist you, young man?" he asked me. "I have come here seeking knowledge and guidance in relation to the mystic arts. And for the record, sir, my name is Victor Werner von Doom." "A pleasure to meet you," I said. Drum getting a small look of shock on his face, which he quickly covered. But not fast enough. For even though that expression he wore only lasted for a second, I saw it, making me smile internally. "I see," Drum replied. "Well then, Victor, please, come in," he said. So I did exactly that. I entered into the New York sanctum, Drum closing the doors behind me immediately after. Once he did, he guided me to a room where he asked me to wait. So I sat down and began doing so. Then not even 10 minutes passed before the doors to the room I was in opened once more and in strolled Earth's current Sorcerer Supreme. The Ancient One. The female version from the MCU, to be clear. Insert image of MCU Ancient One here. Who I honestly prefer over the male version from the comics. A smile on her face, the Ancient One took a seat in one of the open chairs directly across from me, at the table where I was seated, the doors to the room closing on their own immediately after she did. Though I knew it was thanks to magic. "Mr. Doom, a pleasure to meet you," the Ancient One spoke. Yes, thank you, Ancient One," I said. Though me using her title/name didn't make the bald female magician even flinch. But considering she's been alive longer than I have in both my lives, I'm not surprised. "So, you know of me?" the Ancient One asked, while using her magic to conjure forth a teapot, 2 teacups, and 2 saucers for said cups on the table in front of us. "I do," I replied, "though not as well as you might think, since my mother only referenced you a few times in her personal journey," I explained. Which is not a lie. Turns out in this Marvel universe, Cynthia Von Doom studied at Camartage for a few years in her youth, before returning to her homeland and starting her family. All of which was described in a personal journal of hers that the original Victor of this world read a couple of years ago, which I know thanks to my new memories. In fact, the only lie I just told was how well I know the Ancient One. But there is no way I'm mentioning that. In fact, no one but me will ever know about my previous life. For I am not about to unleash uncontrolled chaos onto this world. A world I seek to make my own. I am not that foolish. "I see. So you are Cynthia's child," she spoke, pouring tea from the pot into one of the cups and then placing it in front of me. "That I am," I replied. I then took a sip of my tea. Delicious," I said. "Why, thank you," the Ancient One replied, pouring herself a cup of tea. "So, now that the pleasantries are out of the way, let us get down to the real business, Mr. Doom. Or do you prefer Victor?" "Either one is fine with me," I replied, since unlike the original Doom I won't nitpick every little detail, or be angered by simple slights. That was one of Doom's biggest faults. It kept him from achieving so many of his plans. But it will most certainly not be my downfall. For this Doom shall grasp all he desires. "All right then, Victor," the Ancient One spoke. "You are quite the interesting individual. I see potential in you to become either one of the greatest forces of good this world has never known, or a man who will cause unimaginable destruction and leave nothing but death in his wake. And now here I am, faced with the decision to either teach you or deny you. So tell me, if you were in my position, what would you do?" I would trust my feelings. And then the moment I realized they turned out to be wrong, immediately rectify and fix my mistake, I replied, looking the Ancient One in the eyes. She stared right back at me. The two of us then entered a silence, the only sounds in the room, the two of us enjoying our tea for over a minute, before the Ancient One decided to break said silence. "I see," the Ancient One said. "And I understand. So, does that mean you and your order will train me?" I asked. "Yes, it does," the Ancient One replied, her words bringing a smile to my face. "Since with this I have now taken my first significant step to becoming the Doom I envision myself being. And it feels good." After the Ancient One accepted me as a trainee of the order, the two of us made small talk as we finished up our tea. The main topic of conversation being about my current knowledge in regards to magic and the mystic arts in general, which is not much. I only know the basics. That's why I came to the order in the first place. Other than that, we talked about my childhood, and the Ancient One even told me some stories about my mother in her youth. Stories which made my heart elate with joy. It also hardened my resolve to save my mother's soul from that bastard Mephisto, though I know that is a task easier said than done. Mephisto is no joke. Based on what I know, he's on the same level of power as Dormammu, give or take. That means I'll need to reach the level of Sorcerer Supreme in regards to my magic before I even attempt to directly confront the Lord of Hell. But since Doom in the comics was a candidate for Earth's Sorcerer Supreme, and reputed to be one of the most powerful mystics on Earth, I know I'll be fine. Still, I am not going to rush, no matter how much I want to. Before I knew it, the Ancient One and I had finished our tea, and our conversation. Once we did, she used magic to clean up our mess. The two of us then left the room we were in and returned to the foyer, where Master Drum was waiting for us. "What is the verdict?" he asked the Ancient One. "I will allow Victor to train with our order," the Ancient One replied. "Understood," Drum replied. He then turned his gaze to me. "Welcome, Victor." "Thank you, Master Drum," I replied. Right after I did, the Ancient One opened up a portal to Camartage, which we then both stepped through. Once we did, she closed it. But I paid that no mind as I looked around and took in the beauty of Camartage. Since seeing it in real life is entirely different from seeing it on a screen. The movies didn't do this place justice. I take it from your expression this place is to your liking, Victor? The Ancient One asked. A knowing smile on her face. It is, I replied, despite the old woman already knowing the answer I was going to give. But since she is going to be my teacher, I'll play along. Good. I always enjoy it when people enjoy Camartage. She spoke. Then after the Ancient One did, a new master approached us. The master in question being my boy Wong. Insert image of MCU Wong here. Well then, Victor, this is where we part for today. The Ancient One spoke. This master will show you to your quarters. Understood. I replied to the Ancient One, who then took her leave. Meanwhile I turned to face Wong. Victor Von Doom, and you are? Wong. Just Wong. He replied. Understood, just Wong. I said. Wong then led me to my quarters, where I made myself comfortable, in preparation for my journey into the depths of the mystic arts which begins tomorrow. Alright. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. 2 years. The following morning after my arrival at Camartage, I was up bright and early. Then after slipping into my new robes, which color signified me as a novice, which wouldn't last long, I left my quarters and arrived in the courtyard. After which the training shortly began. My group being led by none other than Carl Mordo. Insert image of MCU Mordo here. Who I learned, as the class went on, is not a bad teacher in the slightest. In fact, I'd say he's a great teacher, if a little forceful. But since I encountered teachers like Mordo in my previous life, his attitude didn't faze me one bit. Unlike some of my fellow novices who were put off guard by the slightly older master's disposition. Well, they better get used to it. Otherwise they won't make it in the order. After 2 hours passed out, physical training came to an end. Me having no problems getting through it. Since the original Victor regularly worked out. He even developed a single set of ABS. The man knew how to take care of himself. Good on him. Especially with his attributes. Dark brown eyes, slightly curly dark brown hair, and a height of 1.88 meters, 6 feet 2 inches. I am not a vain person, but I have no shame as saying I look good. Means I'll have no troubles with the ladies in the future. Now back to what I was talking about. Our physical training ended. Then once it did, all of us novices headed for the library to train our minds. Since magic requires a key understanding of language. Like when creating a computer program, you need to understand how to write its code. Similar to how the Ancient One described magic in the first Doctor Strange film. Arriving at the library, I grabbed several of the largest books around, found a table to sit at, cracked one open, and began reading it, easily comprehending the language and its meaning inside of the book. Since with my new brain power I can accomplish such a feat easily, I can even already somewhat understand how to combine magic and science, just like the original Doom from the comics. Looks like I'm well on my way to becoming what I call a technomage. Finishing the first book I was reading, I moved on to the next one, then the next, etc. Until I was finished reading all the books I had brought with me to the table. So once I was moved to get more, ignoring the shocked looks the other novices in the library were giving me. Getting more books, I continued reading until it was time to move a different aspect of the training. Then before I knew it, the day came to an end. I then got up the following morning and proceeded to do the same thing all over again. This went on for 3 months before I could finally cast higher levels of magic. Once I did, my novice rank was dismissed and I was promoted to apprentice. Then just before the end of the year I reached the rank of disciple, becoming one of the few in the history of the order to ever achieve such a few in such a short amount of time. But for one such as Doom, such an achievement was a foregone conclusion. So with that I was awarded the title of Master of the Mystic Arts by the beginning of the following year. Then once I spent the remainder of the year self-studying at Camartage, learning all I could from its ancient halls, as well as the order's ancient leader, who took me under her wing as her personal apprentice the moment she named me a master. To say I was a little shocked wouldn't be a lie, but I quickly got over that and poured myself into my training with the Ancient One. The things she showed me expanding the power I had even further. Then before I knew it, everything was Chapter 5, Kingpin's Downfall, 2004. Stepping through the portal that I created, the Ancient One and I arrived in the New York Sanctum. As I waved my left hand to close it once we were both through, I turned in her direction, getting ready to say my goodbye. Farewell, Master. And thank you for everything you've done for me and taught me during these past 2 years. I will always be grateful. I spoke, bowing my head slightly to her. You are welcome, Victor. And may I just say it has been a pleasure teaching someone as skilled and naturally gifted in the mystical arts as you, the Ancient One said. It's been a long time since I've felt like this, so thank you in return. She spoke. Right. Well then, I best be on my way. I said. Yes, and I the same. The Ancient One replied. She then opened up a portal back to Camartage. Oh, and one more thing. When you think your children are ready, bring them to Camartage, since I'll be happy to instruct them in the ways of magic, seeing as you won't have much time to do that yourself. Her words making my jaw hit the floor. Since I don't have any children, nor do I plan to have any anytime soon. But since the Ancient One is telling me such things, I think that will likely not be the case, given the abilities of the Time Stone she possesses. However, before I could ask her to explain the words she just spoke to me, she stepped through her portal and then closed it behind her before I could even get another word in. A classic Ancient One move. I know since I've saw it several times during my training. I also know even if I follow the Ancient One and ask her to explain her words just now, she won't. So instead I'll just have to take them to heart and face them head on when the time comes. But really, me with children? I'm not saying I don't want kids. Because I do. Though given my plans for the immediate future, I can't see myself having any. I don't even has a girlfriend or lover right now. Oh well, looks like I'll just have to wait and see where this particular matter is concerned. Resolving myself to do just that, I made my way out of the New York sanctum, in street clothes of course. Since there was no way I was going to walk around in my mystic robes in broad daylight. Even if it is highly unlikely, they won't be out of place, given that I am New York City. After leaving the sanctum, I made my way to a reasonably priced hotel and checked in. Then after doing that, I went out and bought myself a laptop and cell phone. The money I having spent on everything that I saved from my time at MIT, where I assisted on several projects according to my memories from the original Victor. Though it seems he just did it for the recognition. Not that I have an issue with that. Upon purchasing the 2 items, and some food, I headed back to my hotel room, where I then powered up the laptop and easily began spoofing its IP address. Once I did, I began writing a search program, and then once I finished, hacked into the New York CCTV system and let my search program loose. Then while it did its job, I went ahead and ate my food. I then began watching television, until my search program finished running its course, which it did an hour later. Having found the person I was looking for, Wilson Fisk aka Kingpin. Insert image of Wilson Fisk / Kingpin here. As I sat at the desk and looked at his image on the computer screen, I couldn't resist putting a devilish smile on his face. Because soon that fat tub of lard would be dead, and all his riches would belong to Doom. After all, I will need capital if I am to push forward with my plans to liberate my home nation Latveria. Of course there are easier ways to earn money, I know this. But those legitimate ways would take too long. And the longer I delay, the longer my people suffer. Not to mention the incoming canon events that will likely still take place. Events Doom must be ready to confront. So in the end, using this method is the fastest and most efficient way of achieving all I want. It also has the added bonus of removing an annoying gnat from my sight, as well as save the lives of the numerous innocent people Fisk would ruin in the future should he remain breathing. So in a sense, my actions are for the greater good, along with the good of Doom. I continued using my program to track Fisk's movements for 2 weeks straight, finding out where the fat man lays his shiny bald head at night. Once I did that, I then scouted out the location using the mirror dimension, and then the night of the man's reckoning was upon him. Inside of the mirror dimension, I stood on the street in front of Fisk's current place of residence, ready for battle, as I was wearing one of my slightly darker than black tactical turtlenecks, or my tactile necks as I like to call them. Cracking my neck from side to side, I psyched myself up. Alright, showtime, I said. I then entered the building. Once I did so, I used my magic to form 2 ice axes, shaped exactly like the Leviathan axe from the God of War video game franchise. For tonight is going to be a slaughter. Moving through the building, I exited the mirror dimension several times and used my axes to take out any and all of Fisk's security before re-entering it to continue making my way to my primary target, who I eventually reached, after making sure everyone else in the building was good and surely dead. Inside of the mirror dimension, since of Fisk's bedroom, I walked up to the sleeping man's bedside and gazed at him. Thankful he looked nothing like Vincent D'Onofrio, who played him in the MCU, since it would leave a certain bad taste in my mouth if I had to kill a person who was the spitting image of one of my favorite actors in my previous life. I loved the man's performance in Law and Order: Criminal Intent as Gorn. Though even if he did resemble Vincent, that wouldn't stop me from killing him. I'm just saying I would feel slightly bad. But that would not keep Doom from achieving his goal. But on that note, I really hope the Purple Man in this universe doesn't resemble David Tennant. For I certainly wouldn't like to kill my favorite incarnation of the Doctor from Doctor Who. Now back to business. Creating a portal, I exited the mirror dimension. I then took hold of Fisk with my telekinesis, which is magically generated, and lifted him up and out of his bed. I then arranged him in the air as if he was hanging on a cross like man being crucified. When I did this, Fisk woke up and prepared to speak. But not wanting to hear anything out of the man's mouth, I used my telepathy, which I gained also thanks to my magically training, and entered his mind and made sure he didn't speak a word. Then once that was taken care of, I ripped out all of the knowledge I wanted from bald head of his. His feeble attempts at resistance to my telepathic assault futile. For Doom shall always get what he wants in the end. Which I did. All the information surrounding Fisk operations, particularly in regards to his bank accounts, both legal and illegal. Once I had what I wanted, I raised up both my axes in Fisk direction, and focused the man's eyes on me. Do well and listen, fat man, for I shall do you the honor of allowing you to hear the name of the man who has taken everything from you this night, including your life. It is Doom. Now enjoy hell, bitch. I spoke. I then used my axes and slice and dice up Wilson Fisk, ending the Kingpin forever. Once I was done doing this, I used my telekinesis to throw Fisk's body parts all across the room. I then summoned forth a spell circle and unleashed a torrent of flames in the room. While walking out, I quickly did the same thing to several other rooms in the rest of the building. I then entered the mirror dimension and watched as the building burned to the ground, becoming Fisk's eternal resting place. Upon seeing my mission was accomplished, I returned to my hotel room and disposed of my clothes and the laptop. I then crawled into bed and got comfortable, a smile on my face, since I was now a very rich man. Chapter 6, Prelude to F4. New York City, June, 2004. My hands clasped behind my back, like Morpheus from the Matrix, I looked out ahead through the window right in front of me, watching as multiple fully automated assembly lines created numerous Doom bits for me, and then placed them in the rows of Doom bots they had previously created. The robots themselves exact replicas of the ones featured in the Fantastic Four, World's Greatest Heroes television show I watched in my previous life during my childhood. Image here. Just looking at them makes me smile. It also stirs up a fire in my chest, for they are the first piece of the force that will allow me to liberate my homeland Latvia and help the country itself shine like never before since its inception. But I am still not there yet, despite the number of robots that have been built and are currently under my command, as well as the now immeasurable finances I have at my disposal thanks to me dispatching the Kingpin and claiming his riches for myself. The time is still not right for me to launch my campaign of liberation. The first and foremost reason being I still have not built myself armor. For what is Doom without his armor? Now I know I should be building it, but I won't. Not until I hear back on a few things. But in the meantime I have plenty of other activities to keep me busy, like making useful inventions and placing and selling them on the open market, to give myself legitimacy and clout in both the business and scientific communities, which is going well so far, since the inventions I have already created and are selling are doing well. The inventions being the following. The first is the incapacitating cartridge emitting railgun or I.C.E.R from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I have recreated and am selling to law enforcement agencies, military, and private security companies all across the globe. While the second is a portable medical scanner that can display a 3D image of person's body and display any injuries they have. The device is being eaten up by first responders such as police, firefighters, and ambulance companies. I also have many more inventions planned, which I wish to distribute to the world. However, the best of what I have will only be for my country and most loyal compatriots, for that is the will of Doom. As the assembly lines finished producing their number of specified Doom bits for the day I shut them, and everything else in the factory/warehouse down, I then made sure everything was locked up tight before creating a portal to my temporary home/base of operations. A 3-bedroom apartment on Manhattan's Upper West Side. For a man of Doom's caliber needs living accommodations to match. Closing the portal behind me, I moved to my home office and dealt with any immediate business that couldn't wait. Then once I did that, I prepared to relax. Ring ring ring. Only to receive a phone call from an unknown number before I could. But since it was an unknown number, I immediately cancelled the call. Ring ring ring. Only for the exact same number to call back seconds after I dismissed. Seeing that was the case, I decided to take it, if only to explain to whoever was calling me they had the wrong number. Yes, hello, this is Victor Von Doom speaking. I spoke. Victor, so, this is the right number for you, a female voice said. One which my memories from the original Victor told me belonged to none other than Susan Storm, the future Invisible Woman, and the woman who I always thought deserved better than Reed Richards in my previous life, which now, maybe I can make happen. Susan Storm, is that you? I asked, despite already knowing for sure. Man, I haven't heard from you since graduation. I spoke. Since Susan attended MIT with both Reed and Victor, where she earned her own Ph.D. in biological engineering, making her a woman with both looks and smarts. How have you been? I asked. Well, Susan replied. That's good to hear. I said. So, Susan, how can I help you? Well, it's not me actually, it's Reed, Susan said, which instantly made a frown form on my face, since even without the memories this universe's original Victor had with Reed Richards, even in my past life he was not my favorite person. I see. And what does Richards need from me? I asked. For that matter, why doesn't he call me and speak to me himself? To answer your second question first, Reed wasn't sure you would take any of his calls, and even if you did, he wasn't sure you would truly listen to anything he had to say, Susan explained. Oh, so Reed does know how to use that organ we call a brain, I retorted. Victor, Susan said. All right. Continue. I spoke. Good. Now then, to answer your first question, Reed has a proposal he wants to run by you, one that he is hoping you might fund, given your recent success and cash flow, Susan explained. I see. So Reed wishes to use me as a piggy bank, I flatly replied. It's not like that, Victor, truly. Please, if you just hear him out, I'm sure you won't be disappointed, Sue said. You know, for a guy you broke up with, you're going awfully far for Richard, Susan, I said. Since the two of them have already dated and broken up, their breakup having taken place during our final year at MIT. Yeah, I know, Victor. I am. But this isn't about Reed and I, it's about his project, which actually has several merits that could alter the scientific community's way of thinking for generations to come. Sue passionately spoke. So, will you at least hear him out? Normally I would say no, but since it's you asking, I will, I replied. Thank you, Victor, Sue said. No problem, I replied. Susan and I then sorted out the details, like the time and place for the meeting, before ending our phone call, leaving me both happy and irritated at the same time. Go ahead and take a guess why. Now I really need to relax. June 10th, 2004. Stopping in my tracks, I found myself outside the iconic Baxter Building. Well, it's not iconic yet. Right now it's just simply the Baxter Building. It's also where I will have my scheduled meeting with Reed today to hear this proposal he wishes for me to fund, which normally I wouldn't have even considered doing. But this time there are two reasons why I have. The first is because Susan asked me, and the second is because I likely know what this proposal is about, and if I'm right I wouldn't mind funding it, since the benefits will far outweigh the cost in my eyes. If this meeting is about what I am thinking of, well, there is only one way to know for sure. Heading through the building's front door, I quickly arrived at the elevator and took it to the top floor where Reed's lab/home was situated. Stepping out of the elevator, I was immediately greeted by the sight of two people. The first was Reed Richards. Insert image of Reed Richards here. While the second was Susan Storm. Insert image of Susan Storm/Invisible Woman here. Victor. Welcome. Reed said. Yes, welcome Victor. Susan spoke. Thank you both. I replied to them. Once I did, Reed didn't waste any time getting his presentation started. It being exactly what I suspected it would be about. Reed wanted my assistance and funding for a mission into space to study the effects of exposure of clouds of cosmic energy on biological samples. This being the mission that would grant Reed, Susan, and the current non-present Jonathan Storm and Ben Grimm their fantastic powers. So with that in mind, I only had answer in mind for Reed. So Victor, what do you think? Reed asked me. Once he finished speaking. Sounds exceptional. I'll help you out. I spoke, grinning internally, because this would lead to be gaining some superpowered allies, as well as a possible superpowered future queen. Since Doom will not allow just any women to stand by his side. Chapter 7, Job Offer. Upon hearing me agree to fund his expedition project into space, Reed put a smile on his face. He then came over and shook my hand. Thank you Victor. Thank you so much. He spoke. Think nothing of it Reed. I replied, ending our handshake as soon as I could. After all, what are friends for? Right you are. Reed replied. He then began talking about mission specifics. But when he did, I raised up my right hand to silence him. Let me stop you there Reed. For before we continue, there are some things that need to be addressed. I spoke. First, you must create a clear and concise plan for this little expedition of yours. Second, you will on a budget. Third, any results this experiment of yours produces will be shared and accredited to all major participants in this endeavor. And finally, Susan is to accompany you on the mission. If she is willing to, that is. Oh, I am. And I gladly will. Susan spoke up. Right. Well, I have no objections to any of those proposals. Reed said. Good. I replied. Well then I'll leave you two to start working on a plan for the expedition. You're not staying? Susan asked me. No, I replied. Of course I would, but I have another meeting scheduled for today that I simply cannot miss. Thus, good day. I then walked away from Susan and Reed and made my way out of the Baxter Building, mentally making sure everything was in order for my second meeting of the day, which is definitely the far more important of the two meetings in my opinion, since this one might net me my first human ally, meaning I need to make a good impression. And Doom is certainly not one to make bad impressions. Third person, POV. Finding herself standing outside the address she had been sent, Lucia von Bardosh knocked on the door in front of her. Insert image of Lucia von Bardosh here. Still wondering how she ended up where she is right at this moment, since her life was sure and steady, until 2 weeks ago when she got an email requesting an in-person interview for a job in New York City, which made Lucia extremely anxious, since she had never applied for any sort of job in New York City. She was perfectly happy and content at her current job, which was a professor at her alma mater, the University of North Carolina. So why was Lucia getting ready to enter an interview for a job she never even applied for, you might ask? Well, it's because the sender of the mysterious email she received mentioned her home country of Latveria and her past there. This set Lucia even more on edge. That's why she is where she is today, to learn and understand what the fuck is going on. A few moments after Lucia knocked, the door opened and she found herself staring at a man, who was quite handsome in her opinion. But Lucia wouldn't let that distract her from the important matters at hand. Hello there, the man said. My name is Victor Von Doom. So glad you could make it here today, Ms. Bardosh. Victor spoke. Please, come in. Victor then stepped back and Lucia entered the apartment after him. Then as soon as both of them were inside, Victor closed the door. He then turned to face Lucia, who immediately began pointing a Glock 17 at Victor's face when he did. Okay, here's how this is going to go. You answer my questions and maybe I don't kill you. Understand? Lucia spoke in a cold tone, yet Victor didn't even flinch from her words, nor the situation he has found himself in. Instead, he maintained a calm expression on his face while looking Lucia in the eyes. Hey, didn't you hear me? Lucia asked after a few seconds had gone by, but Victor still remained silent. All right, death it is then, Lucia said. However, before she could pull the trigger, a figure rushed her from behind and easily restrained her, removing the Glock 17 from her grasp. The figure in question being one of Victor's fully operational Doombots. Fuck, let me go, Lucia shouted, struggling to break free from the grasp of the Doombot. But her efforts produced no results. You need to stop struggling, since it's pointless, Victor spoke, earning Lucia gaze on him. Pending down, he picked up the Glock and instantly dislodged the magazine clip, while also making sure to get rid of the bullet in the chamber by cocking it. You're never going to be able to break free of my Doombot's grasp. Also, don't bother calling for help. For the moment you entered this apartment, signal jammers and white noise generation machines have been active. Victor explained. I see, Lucia replied. Well, in that case then just ahead and get it over with already. Put me out of my misery. Now why would I do that when I'm looking to hire you, Ms. Bardosh? Victor asked her, making Lucia gained a confused expression on her face. You really want to hire me? Lucia asked. Victor nodded his head. I do. Your record is quite impeccable. Lucia von Bardosh, currently 28 years old, born in Latvia, and came to the United States on a student visa at only 16. Graduated top of your class from the University of North Carolina with a Ph.D. in political science in only 3 years. You had offers not only to work for the United Nations, but also the U.S. State Department. Yet you turned them all down to teach at your college. Admiral. But we both know that's not the full story, he said. Your parents were political activists working to change Latvia from within. However, the current regime didn't like that one bit, so your parents were killed. Shortly after your 13th birthday, I might add. Once this happened, you joined the underground Latvian resistance, learning combat skills and weaponry management. Then you had the idea to come to the US, but only to further the cause of the Latvian resistance. Since you use your connections to send supplies such as weapons, food, and medicine to your comrades fighting in the homeland. A/N, since the official Marvel wiki doesn't have much in regards to Lucia's background, I made one up for her for the purposes of this story. Hearing Victor speak, Lucia couldn't help but get a shocked expression on her face. She also felt incredibly scared, for the man before her was speaking of her entire life like it was nothing at all. As Victor finished speaking, Lucia then decided to speak once more. Who are you? Lucia shakily asked. As I said earlier, my name is Victor von Doom, but my full name is Victor Werner von Doom. Like you, I am from Latvia, and like you and the resistance, I want to see our country free from its tyrannical and incompetent regime, Victor explained. And I would like you to work with me to see that happen, Lucia. Amongst other things. But those can be discussed at a later date, after our homeland is safe and secure, he spoke. And you think you can do that? Lucia questioned, snorting afterwards. You are but one man. What could you possibly accomplish that no other single man can? To Lucia's question, Victor didn't respond. Instead, he put a grin on his face. He then waved his left hand and suddenly a giant swirling portal appeared right in front of Lucia's eyes, making them go wide in shock. What? No, this is impossible. Lucia spoke. Oh, I'm afraid that is where you are wrong, Mrs. Bardosh. What you are seeing is very real and quite possible, Victor said. He then stepped through the portal, the Doombit holding Lucia stepping through right after. This put Lucia in a large warehouse, where she was once again shocked as she saw rows and rows of robots like the one currently restraining her. You asked what I could accomplish that no other single man could. Well, here is your answer, Ms. Bardosh. Victor spoke. Gaze upon the work of doom, he said. This in turn caused Lucia to turn her head and look at Victor, who now looked totally different in her eyes. From the way he stood, to the way he spoke, Lucia found herself not only looking at a man, but a leader, no a ruler. Yet she has to be sure. Victor, what do you plan to do after removing the current regime in Latvia? Lucia asked. Victor smirked at her in response. Why, I would have thought that obvious, Ms. Bardosh. Doom shall lead. He spoke with authority, finally cementing Lucia's thoughts in regards to Victor. I see, Lucia replied. In that case, is your job offer still on the table? She asked. It's the reason I called you here in the first place. So yes, Victor replied. Good. Then I accept. Lucia spoke. Excellent, Victor said. He then raised his left hand and the Doombit restraining Lucia let her go. Once this happened, she extended her left hand in Victor's direction and he took it with own, shaking it. You have made a wise choice today, and I promise it will not be one you regret. Victor spoke. Delighted he had just made his first human ally. The first of many he hoped. Chapter 8, Birth of the Fantastic Four-Eye. Victor, POV. Once Lucia and I finished shaking hands, we moved into the office. After doing so, I gave her a contract to sign. A very special one. The contract itself being magical in nature, which will erase any and all of Lucia's memories in regards to me and my activities should she decide to ever betray me in any form or fashion. Because while I do want her as an ally, I am not foolish enough to blindly trust her. No, Doom is not a fool. Not protesting one bit when I handed her the contract, Lucia looked it over and then signed it. The two of us then discussed a few more things before I opened a portal back to my apartment and the two of us returned to it. Once I did, Lucia and I exchanged farewells and she left. After this happened, I decided to make myself some dinner and then celebrate by binge-watching Star Trek, the original series, since it exists in this reality, which is a blessing to all who live here if you ask me. 2 weeks after Lucia signed her employment/fail-safe magical contract and agreed to work with me, she permanently moved to New York, having taken care of any outstanding business she had to attend to in North Carolina. Once she did, I immediately put her to work, turning her into my own version of Pepper Potts. But more than that, I began working to earn Lucia's utmost trust in earnest. Since unlike the original Doom, I am not arrogant enough to think I am handle everything on my own, nor will I see those I surround myself with as simply a means to an end. For the most part, no, I want true allies. But I know to gain those things I have to work for them, which is fine by me, for Doom is not afraid of a little hard work. So with that in mind, I began noticing slow but steady results as the months began to pass. The year turning into 2005 before I knew it. My personal plans proceeding on schedule, I turned my attention to another important matter, making sure the Fantastic Four were born. Once Lucia and I got into a stable working relationship, I focused on that project, hammering out the details with Susan and Reed, making sure Ben Grimm and Jonathan Storm ended up being a part of the mission itself, which was relatively easy, considering unlike in the original film, this time Reed's experiment would take place on a brand new space facility belonging to NASA, that had been launched to the purposes of such experiments as Reed was conducting, to see how a zero-G environment would affect scientific experiments. So after getting the mission approved, the date was set and soon the band of four were off into the stars, on their way to gaining their fantastic powers, which I would be all too happy to help them control and master, for Doom is nothing if not generous. NASA Space Station, July 8, 2005. Third person, POV. Inside one of the labs on the new NASA space station he was currently aboard, Reed prepared the biological samples he and his team had brought for exposure to the incoming cosmic energy cloud, a smile on his face, since Reed couldn't wait to see the results of this experiment. An experiment that might open the door to so many new scientific possibilities it wasn't even funny. As Reed continued prepping the samples, the door to the lab he was in opened up. Susan and her younger brother, Jonathan Johnny Storm, entering it. Insert image of Jonathan Storm / Human Torch here, though Reed was too absorbed in his work to even acknowledge them. Seeing this, Susan went up to Reed and tapped him slightly on the shoulder. This in turn caused him to stop working and turn in her direction. "Oh Susan, hello. Wow sis, no wonder you broke up with the guy. He doesn't even notice when you entered the room," Johnny spoke, earning him a slap on the back of the head from Susan. "Ow," Johnny exclaimed. "Shut up Johnny," Susan said. She then focused her attention back on Reed. "Hard at work I see." "Of course," Reed replied. "This is a momentous occasion in scientific history we're about to be after all. The world is likely about to experience a massive change, and we're all a part of that," he said. "And Victor to Reed," Susan said. "Since without him we wouldn't even be here right now," she said. Given that Victor had funded this entire expedition and experiment out of his own pocket, even if NASA had provided the space station and the shuttle, it was only because Victor negotiated a deal to make it happen, which included making a donation to the space program itself. "Yes, of course Susan. I am not forgetting Victor. Speaking of which, when we get back to Earth I need to thank him," Reed spoke, since he is truly grateful for the opportunity his old college classmate had made possible for him. "You do, and I'll remind you to," Susan agreed. "Victor, you mean the guy who was obviously trying to flirt with you, ow," Johnny said, given that Susan had slapped him upside the head again. "Johnny, enough," she told her younger brother. "And whether Victor was or was not trying to flirt with me doesn't matter, especially since it's none of your business," Susan spoke, though internally she admitted the flirting Victor had done with her felt nice. Asterisk beep, 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 asterisk. But right after Susan did so, the klaxons throughout the entire station began going off. "What the hell?" Johnny shouted. "Oh no," Reed said, his eyes glued to a nearby computer terminal. "The cosmic energy cloud has arrived earlier than predicted. We only have minutes before it strikes the station," he quickly explained. Sue and Johnny getting worried expressions on their faces upon hearing that. "Shit," Johnny exclaimed. "Reed, what can we do?" Susan asked. "We need to get to deepest part of the station and let the shielding do its work," Reed replied. "Where's Ben?" he asked. "Outside, on a spacewalk," Johnny spoke. The moment he did, silence enveloped the entire room. Then a few seconds passed before the three ran out of the room, heading straight for their friend Ben. Hoping they are not too late. Outside in his spacesuit, in the void of space, Benjamin Grimm was enjoying his spacewalk. Insert image of Benjamin Grimm / the thing here. Having no idea what was about to happen, a smile on his face, he looked at both the moon and planet Earth, and took in their beauty. "Never gets old," he mused. Then a few minutes after Ben did, the comms in his suit came alive. "Ben, can you hear me?" Reed asked. "Yeah Reed. What's up? Not enough samples around for you to run your experiments on?" Ben asked, joking. "No Ben. You need to get inside the station right now. The cosmic energy cloud is arriving sooner than expected. It will be here within minutes," Reed quickly explained. This sent a shiver down Ben's spine, but he quickly recovered and responded to Reed. "Understood," Ben replied. He then began using his suit's thrusters to turn back in the direction of the station and fly toward it, Ben managing to reach it with no problems in the slightest, though just as he did, the cosmic energy cloud appeared, and then passed right over the station, irradiating everyone and everything it touched, including the four explorers. The four having no idea just how much this moment would affect the rest of their lives. Chapter 9, Birth of the Fantastic Four 2. Victor, POV. Jumping back, I dodged a right kick aimed at my right side, courtesy of Lucia. Standing on a martial arts map on the ground floor of the factory I am using to create my army of Doombots, dressed in white martial arts GIs, the two of us are having a sparring match to keep our hand-to-hand combat skills in shape, as well as to get in a good workout. Seeing an opening, I rushed in and threw several jabs in Lucia's direction, but using her palms she expertly deflected each and every one of my attacks. Though given she is proficient, and holds several black belts, in various forms of martial arts, her actions don't surprise me. especially since sparring like this has become a regular thing for the two of us. We do it at least once a week now, which I very much enjoy. Understanding my attacks were having no effect, I backed off. But immediately after I did so, Lucia rushed in and came at me with a high left kick, aimed at my head. Bringing my left arm up, I blocked it. I then quickly wrapped my left arm around Lucia's leg and pulled her forward, taking the two of us down to the ground. I then moved to put her leg in a lock, only for her to slip free at the last second and then come at me with a right leg axe kick. Rolling out of the way of her attack, I too jumped back up to my feet, just in time to take a right punch to the gut, then a left knee to the chin, which put me on my ass and then back again all too quickly. It's your win, I spoke. Lucia, having won our sparring match today, since per the rules we set in place, if you get your opponent fully on their back 5 times then you claim victory. And you've been practicing, haven't you? I asked, standing to my feet. Well, how else will I break and then overtake your winning streak in our sparring sessions? Lucia replied. Find ways to distract me, I retorted. A tall order, since I don't think much would distract a man of your caliber, Victor. Well, as you just pointed out, I am a man. And like most other men, there is one thing even I would be distracted by, I said, my gaze traveling from Lucia's sweat-covered neck to her rising and falling chest, her martial arts GI leaving hardly anything to my imagination, though that type of distraction will only work on me when certain women apply it. I see, Lucia replied. She then stepped closer to me and gave me a better view of her goodies, a smile on her face. So, do I fall into that category? She asked. What do you think? I asked, turning to fully face her and push our chests slightly together, the two of us ending up feeling each other's breath on our faces. We stayed like that for several seconds before I decided to step back and break contact. Well, as usual, thanks for a great workout, I said, a smile on my face. Sure, Lucia replied. The same to you, and just so you know, I'm up for it anytime, and in any fashion or form you choose, she spoke, licking her lips after she did. I'll remember that, I replied. So, what's on the agenda for today? Nothing of true importance except for one matter, which would be, the one known as Chloe has finally responded to your request for meeting. Lucia spoke, bringing a smile to my face. Since right after I got my hands on the Kingpin's vast fortune, I began putting out feelers to set up a meeting with Chloe, though the bastard never responded at all last year. But now that he has, I can finally get my hands on vibranium, the key component I have been trying to get my hands on to begin building my battle armor, though doing so with my current capabilities is not an easy task, especially since I don't know the exact location of Wakanda. But even if I did, as I am currently going, there would be too much of a risk. However, shortly that risk will disappear entirely, and when it does, I shall deal with Wakanda and its people, for none shall be allowed to so blatantly defy the will of doom. No one. On another note, I'm also trying to get my hands on adamantium, but that stuff is even more scarce than vibranium. Plus I currently don't have time to deal with the people who I know have access to it, meaning that metal will have to wait, just like with you, which won't be available until the Prince of Thunder arrives here on Earth in another few years. Excellent. Set it up, and make it for as soon as possible, I instructed. Of course, Victor, Lucia replied. Once she did, we cleaned up from our sparring session. I then created a portal and took her back home to her apartment, before creating another one and heading home myself. Upon arrival, I showered and then had a meal. Then immediately after I did so, I received a call from an official at NASA, who explained to me the station Susan and the others were one had been hit by the cosmic energy cloud several hours ago. Not only that, but she and the others on board were directly hit and irradiated, the 4 of them having only just re-established contact and called for assistance. As the explanation went on, I simply listened, showing my concern for their situation. Then once the official finished filling me in on the details, we ended our call, a devilish grin forming on my face afterwards. For now the Fantastic Four are in play, and I will not let such an opportunity slip through my fingers, because Doom is just that good. July 15, 2005. Standing outside the Baxter building, I saw 2 cabs pull up and Susan and the others get out of them, all 4 of them sporting haggard expression on their faces. Not that I can blame them, since for the past week, after their failed mission in and rescue from space, they've been detained at a NASA Kennedy Space Center facility down in Florida, where they launched the mission from, being questioned by government officials, and going through a battery of tests to determine how the cosmic radiation affected them. How do I know this, you ask? Why, I simply hacked into NASA and used my magical abilities to place several bugs and listening devices all throughout the facility down there. You know, nothing much. Now as for why the 4 of them are back in New York, and not still detained at the government facility down in Florida due to their powers, it's because the tests the government ran all came back negative. Simply put, they couldn't detect the 4's powers. But given the level of government equipment, I'm not surprised. Especially the equipment of a civilian agency, and not one like S.H.I.E.L.D., which happens to be a public organization in this Marvel reality, just like it was in the mainstream comics. Though from what I've been able to find out, it was founded the exact same way it was in the MCU. Moving on. As the 4 of them reached me, I spoke. Well, you all look like shit. Thank you, Victor. But we know, Susan replied. Of course you do, I said. But on a serious note, how are you all doing after everything that's happened? How do you think we're doing, man? Johnny sarcastically asked me. Johnny, not now, Susan told her brother. And don't take your anger out on Victor. No, Susan. It's fine. Given what's happened, I completely understand why Jonathan is angry. If I were in his position, I would feel the same. I spoke. Thanks, man. Johnny said to me. Think nothing of it. I said. So, now that you all are back, what are going to do now? We're all going to stay here at Reed's place for a while. Since he wants to run some tests of his own on us. Ben explained, as if NASA already didn't do enough of those this past week. He grumbled. Ben, my tests will be completely different, and look for things NASA likely missed or simply dismissed. Reed told his best friend. I know, Reed, I do. It's just. Yeah, I understand, Ben. Truly, I do. Reed replied. He then looked in my direction. Victor, listen. About the mission dash. Reed, you needn't say anything more. I spoke. Cutting him off. What happened was a freak accident, and nothing you could have done could have prevented it. Sometimes bad shit just happens. But dwelling on it won't change what's already occurred. The best thing to do after an event like this, in my opinion, is learn to accept it and move forward. Right. Reed replied. Thank you, Victor. Sure. I replied. Well then, if you'll excuse me, I'll take my leave. I said. I then left the four as they entered the Baxter building. Returning home, I did some work, and then settled down for the night. That is until I received a frantic phone call from Susan at 1 a.m. in the morning. Victor, I need you come to the Baxter building immediately. Please, it's an emergency. She rapidly spoke. Susan, slow down. What's happening? I asked. Despite the fact I already likely knew. Things are weird. Johnny can become on fire, Reed can stretch, Ben is. Victor, just please come. Sue begged. It'll be all right, Susan. There's no need to cry. I'm on my way. I said. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Susan said. Anytime, my dear. I replied. We then ended our phone call. Once we did, I quickly got ready and started making my way towards the Baxter building. Already crafting plans to help the four, just not in the way they think. Chapter 10, Acceptance and Training. Arriving at the Baxter building, I swiftly took the elevator up to Richard's home. Stepping out of it, I immediately saw Susan and the others, their powers running out of control. Richard's was a tangled mess on the floor, Susan was fading in and out, a frightened expression on her face, Johnny was grinning like an idiot as he tried to control flames on his fingertips, while Ben was sitting in a corner of the lab with an angry and sort of hollow look in his eyes. So, it's bad. But not as bad as I thought it would be, I thought. At least none of them have left the building and are roaming the streets of the city. That would have made things harder to deal with. Especially if any of them got caught on camera or the like. That would have drawn attention none of us need at the moment. So I am glad they all stayed put. Now, to wrangle them. Oh, and on a quick note, Johnny thankfully looks nothing like Chris Evans. Good. That would have made things really strange when Roger appears in the future. But back to the matter at hand. Hello, I spoke, drawing everyone's attention to me. Victor, what are you doing here? Reed asked, his mouth wide open and elongated as he did. Yet the words he was speaking still came out clear as day, making it both cool and disgusting at the same time. Susan called me and asked me to come over right away. I quickly explained. And now I can see why. Looks like that cloud of cosmic energy did affect you all. You can say that again. It turned us into monsters. Ben shouted in rage. When he did, I looked directly at him. Monsters, Mr. Grimm. How wrong you are. I see no monsters here. Only those who do not yet know how to control the power they have now come to possess. I said. Now then, everyone clear your minds and concentrate. Reed, picture your body the way it was before. Susan, picture yourself solid. Jonathan, picture yourself not ablaze or aflame in any manner. And Mr. Grimm, calm yourself, lest you break the others' concentration. I spoke. Hey, who are you to be giving us orders? Johnny asked. Jonathan Storm, just shut the fuck up for once in your life and listen. Susan shouted, making Johnny cower slightly. Yes, sis. Johnny replied. After he did, he began following my instructions. So did everyone else. That's why within 5 minutes Reed, Susan, and Johnny were all back to their normal appearances. Good work, all of you. Now, keep focusing. For letting up for even a moment will make your powers got out of control once again. I explained to them. They nodded their heads. All except for Ben, of course. But now that the others were taken care of for a moment, I could focus my attention on him. Walking over to the man, I summoned several spell circles in the air around him that began to analyze his body, ignoring the shocked expression Ben gave me after I did. Victor, what in the dash? Quiet, Richards. I interrupted Reed. This analysis requires my full concentration at the moment. Well, actually it doesn't. I just don't want to answer any of Reed's numerous questions right now. Deciding to heed my words, Reed closed his mouth and kept it shut, giving me sweet and utter silence as I worked my magic on Ben, which lasted for 5 minutes before the results came in, being just as I suspected they would. I see. As expected. I spoke, waving my hand to dismiss all the spell circles in the air around Ben, who was looking at me with a curious gaze. What? What is it? What did you learn? Can you fix me with that you just did? Can I go back to being human? Ben asked, peppering me with several questions at once. I leveled a glare at him to make him stop, which he did. Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Now to answer some of your questions. Yes, I learned something just now from the magical analysis I performed on you. Wait, magic is real? Johnny asked out, only to earn himself a slap on the back of the head by Susan. All right, I'll be quiet, he said. Thank the universe for Susan. Now as I was saying, I learned something about your condition just now, I said. Next, I am not going to fix you, Mr. Grimm. At least not in the way you think. But what I am going to do is help you, like I will help Susan and the others. And for the last time, you are not a monster. Simply a man who was gifted power and has no idea how to control it yet. But if you and the others follow my instructions, that will no longer be the case. Then you will be able to do this on your own. I raised up my right hand in front of Ben, and a spell circle appeared in front of it. A light then came out of the circle and washed over Ben's entire body, turning him back to the way he was before he was struck by the cosmic energy cloud. Proving my theory, and the analysis from the spell circles I used on Ben, correct. By learning magic, Ben can come to control his powers. Because it never made sense to me that Reed, Susan, and Johnny had the ability to control their powers, yet Ben never could. Even though they were all hit by the same cosmic energy/rays. I mean, it stands to reason he should be able to, yet never in the comics, television shows, or movies could he. As such, I decided to do a magical analysis on Ben to see if it could help. Given that it was energy that triggered his transformation, and magic is basically all about manipulating energies, I deduced it may be able to help Ben control his powers. Looks like I was right. Score another one for Doom. Whoa, Johnny exclaimed. Susan and Reed joining in immediately afterwards. While Ben simply touched himself, with a smile of utter delight on his face. Wait, that came out wrong. I'm back. Ben said. Yes and no, I said. For what I just did is only temporary. Then no sooner than I spoke did Ben revert back to his thing form, as I'm calling it from now on. What? No, he shouted. Ben then looked at me desperately. Victor, Mr. Doom, whatever. Do what you just did again and make me look normal, please. He begged. As I just told you, Mr. Grimm, what I just did is only temporary. And if I did it again, the same thing would simply happen. However, if you did it yourself, then things would be very different. You would be able to change forms at will, I explained. However, learning to do so will take time, as well as patience. Not to mention you learning to stop seeing yourself as a monster. It won't be easy, but if you can do it, then you can take control of the power you have been gifted and make it yours. So, what do you say, Mr. Grimm? Aye, Ben muttered, an unsure look on his face. Take your time, there is no rush. I told him. When you have come to a decision, let me know. I spoke. Now then, as for the rest of you, I turned to face them. Unlike Mr. Grimm, you can control abilities much easier, meaning your training to fully gain control over your powers starts now. Wait a moment, Victor, Reed said. While I appreciate you helping us out, and what you're doing for Ben, there are still things we need to work out and discuss, such as if these powers are a danger to us, what other side effects might present themselves if we continue to keep and use them. Not to mention if any of us even want to keep these powers in the first place. Speak for yourself, Reed. I'm not giving these powers up and no one can make me, Johnny said, giving Susan a look. Not even you, sis. I'm not budging on this no matter what you say, even if your powers cost you your life, Johnny, Susan asked. Okay, if they are bad for me, I'll give them up. But only if. Otherwise I'm keeping them, Johnny replied. Fine, Susan retorted. She then turned to look at me. And Victor, I truly appreciate the help you've given us tonight, but Reed is correct. I never said he wasn't. I spoke. But the fact still remains, all of you need to learn control. Unless you want to lose control of your abilities out in public and risk injuring yourselves and others. Because from what I saw when I first arrived, that would be a very likely scenario, as you all are right now. Especially for you, Jonathan. Given that your abilities are flame and heat based. So like I said a moment ago, training starts now. Unless anyone wants to make any other objections. To my question no one spoke up. Good. Then, let us begin, I said. Thus I began teaching the F4 how to use their powers. Planting some of my seeds in their hearts that I hope would grow and bear fruit. Chapter 11, Armor. July 18, 2005. Standing off to the side, I watched as Johnny, Susan, and Reed practiced with their powers. 3 days have passed since all of them manifested their abilities, and I began helping them in learning to control and eventually master them. During this short amount of time, these three have made great progress. They can now activate and deactivate their powers at will. Though that was just the first step. They still have a long way to go, especially with what I know they are capable of thanks to my foreknowledge. None of them have even scratched the surface of what they can do, but that is exactly why I am lending them all a helping hand, so they can reach their full potentials. For the most part, I am also doing this since it is benefiting me, not only in regards to getting into the Four's good graces but in other ways as well. For instance, just yesterday Reed asked him to assist him in developing what will become his unstable molecule formula. Given how everyone's clothing suffers when they use their powers, Johnny's getting it the worst. They always end up burned to a fiery crisp, which always leaves him in his birthday suit. All his goodies on display for all to see. Let's just say that is one image I will definitely be erasing from my mind when I have the chance. The only reason I haven't yet is because it keeps happening. So until I am sure it won't, I will endure such memories in my head. But the first chance I get to do away with them for good, I will. As I continued watching the three in front of me practice with their powers, I noticed Ben approaching me out of the corner of my left eye. When I did, I turned in the man's direction just as he reached me. Yes, Mr. Grimm, I asked. The offer you made the other day, does it still stand? He asked. Yes, it does. I easily replied. Glad Ben is finally going to give me an answer in regards to him learning magic to control his powers better. I thought it would take him longer to decide, but it looks like my calculations were off. But in a good way, so it's fine. So, I take it you are finally going to give me your answer. I spoke. I am. Ben replied. And the answer is yes. Please teach me. He spoke. Sure. I replied. But I won't be personally teaching you. Instead you will go and learn at the same place I did. What, so Ben gets to learn magic and we don't? Unfair. Johnny complained. He, Susan, and Richards, having stopped their training to listen in on our conversation. Johnny, enough. Ben needs this. We really don't. Sue spoke up. True, but it would be interesting to learn how magic actually functions, given that someone won't explain it to us. Reed said, giving me a look, which I pointedly ignored. Just like I have basically been ignoring Reed's questions in regards to magic, ever since I revealed its existence to the four a few days ago when I used it to help Ben. Since a regular Reed Richards is already enough of a headache to deal with. But one who knows and understands magic. Yeah, fuck that noise. Doom will not be responsible for unleashing such an abomination into existence. As I have told you before, Reed magic is complex, and requires your complete attention and focus. None of which you, Susan, or Johnny can give it right now. But Ben is different. I explained once again. Now then, Mr. Grimm, sit tight while I make all the arrangements. Right. Ben replied, his voice filling with slight hope. Good. His depressive aura was not doing him any favors. Nor will it help him in his mystical arts training. But I'm sure the Ancient One can handle it. Since given her age, I'm sure she's encountered situations similar to this before. That's why I'm sending Ben to learn from her, even if the woman herself doesn't know it yet. On that note, when Ben stepped away from me and Susan and the others went back to their training, I myself stepped away and then took out my cell phone, dialing up the Ancient One. Since she carries an cell phone, and even gave me her personal number when I left Camartage last year. Bringing the phone up to my ear, I heard it ring only once before the call connected. Then before I could even explain the situation, the Ancient One spoke. Yes, I would be more than delighted to have Mr. Grimm train here at Camartage, she said, making me internally sigh as she once again trolled me. All thanks to the time stone. I wonder if she'd let me borrow it for a bit to do the same? A question for later. Great. That makes this all the more easier then, I said. The two of us then quickly made arrangements before ending our call. Once we did, I got ready to go and inform Ben, before suddenly getting another call, this time from Lucia. Answering it, I brought the phone up to my ear. Yes, Lucia? I asked, since she rarely calls me during work hours, unless it's an emergency, though we haven't had any of those. I hope this isn't the first. I just got a message from Chloe's people. The meeting has been set. She spoke. Understood. I replied, grinning after I did. For now, vibranium would be mine. Ending the call with Lucia, I then walked over to Susan and the others. Excuse me, I'm taking my leave for the day, I told them. Why? Susan asked. I just received a call about an important meeting I have been trying to set up for months finally being set up. So I must go and prepare, I explained. But don't worry, I won't be gone for long. This will only take me 2 to 3 days to deal with tops. Actually even less than that, but the 4 do not need to know that. Understood, Victor. Go ahead and handle your business. Reed spoke. We can manage on our own. Thank you, Reed, I said. I then bid the 4 farewell, before heading off to claim my previous vibranium. July 20th, 2005. Illegal South American port. Dressed in a tactile and military boots and pants, I stood under a full moon in an illegally built port, situated on the southern coastline of Peru in South America. Lucia standing on my left, her face a mask, while her attire consisted of tactical clothing that accentuated her figure quite nicely. The reason the two of us are here? To do a deal with Chloe to purchase some of his vibranium. As the two of us continued to wait, ignoring the looks the people passed us by were giving us, the man of the hour himself eventually showed up. Ulysses Chloe. Insert image of Ulysses Chloe here. Several of his men surrounding him, 2 of which were carrying a lockbox. Chloe arrived in front of the 2 of us and scrutinized our faces, likely burning them into his mind in case we tried to fuck him, which was fine by me, since right now Lucia and I have illusion spells cast on us, making our appearances, height, and even our voices completely different than what they normally are. So even if we do decide to fuck over Chloe, he can do nothing to us, because the man has literally no idea who he's truly dealing with. After 5 minutes passed, Chloe stopped scrutinizing our faces. Are you finished? I asked him, when stepped back. Because I came here to do a deal, not have a staring contest. I spoke. You got spunk, boy. I like that. Chloe told me. But you're right. We all came here to do a deal, so let's do it then, he said. Chloe then snapped his fingers. After he did, the 2 men carrying the lockbox walked up and placed it on the ground in front of Lucia and I. They then opened it up, revealing its content. Vibranium. Specifically 1 ton of it. Exactly what I came here for. There, we've shown you ours, now how about you show us yours? Chloe spoke. Of course, I said. I then nodded to Lucia. Seeing it, she took the 2 black duffel she was carrying off her shoulders and placed them on the ground in front of Chloe's men, who then unzipped them, revealing tons of cash in each of them. $2 billion altogether to be exact. A fair price for 1 ton of vibranium in my opinion. Looks like you delivered. As did you. I said. So with that our deal is done. Yes. Clay said. He and his men then left with their money, having no idea all of their cash was laced with a special radioactive, but non-fatal, isotope that I could track no matter where it went in the entire world. The isotope itself being undetectable by normal means, since there was no way I was simply going to let Clay slip away. He's too valuable, especially since he knows the exact location of Wakanda, among other things, all of which will belong to Doom when FNE time is right. But for now I have more important matters to attend to, like finally creating the one thing that makes Doom who he truly is, armor. Collecting the lockbox, Lucia and I left the port and ventured into the forest. Then after we made sure we weren't being tracked in any manner, I portaled us back to the factory and then without wasting a moment began work on my armor. Also yes, I have revealed the existence of magic to Lucia in its entirety. Moving on. While building my armor 2 weeks passed by in a flash, though I didn't spend all my time working on my personal project and forgetting my other responsibilities. Unlike others, Tony Stark and Reed Richards, Doom knows how to keep his sensibilities. Thus I made sure to get Ben situated at Camartage. I also made sure to keep up with Susan, Reed, and Johnny, helping them with their powers. Even introduced them all to Lucia, which I noticed made Susan a little jealous. Good. But back to my point. Even while taking care of my other responsibilities I still managed to finish my armor. Standing in front of it as it laid on a metal table before my eyes I cried a little, since it looks beautiful. The armor itself an exact copy of Doom's mystical armor that he created during his time in Hell. Image here. Although the classic Doom armor design is great, I prefer this one. Especially since the armor itself is partially mystical in nature. Since in addition to all the technology one used to build the armor, I have also enchanted it with several spells, truly blending together my scientific and mystical capabilities. This right here is the first pinnacle of all my hard work, and it is glorious. Now, it just needs one more thing. Moving up to the armor, I held my left hand over it. I then conjured forth an eldritch knife and cut my left palm. As my blood touched the armor, ignoring the pain in my hand, I recited a spell. When I did, the armor itself glowed brightly with dark green energy for several seconds before it faded. Once it did, I knew my spell was complete. So I dismissed the eldritch knife and used a quick healing spell on my hand. I then backed up and focused on my armor, immediately feeling a direct link to it. Since that spell I just performed bound the armor to my person. Now no matter where or when I can summon it to me, which I think I'll do right now. Focusing on summoning my armor around my person, I made it happen and found myself wearing my creation. My long badass green cape flowing down behind me. Since Doom's armor is not complete without his cape. Slowly opening and closing my fingers, I grinned, feeling more powerful than I have since I arrived in this world and began my new life. Now I truly feel to my core that I am Doom, and it feels truly delicious. Chapter 12, Extremis. As I continued to revel in my new feelings of wholeness, I also did several movements in my armor, to get used to it, which only took me 5 minutes to do. The armor itself feeling like it has always been a part of me. It's like a second set of skin. Sure, it's one with enough power to single-handedly destroy several small counties, or one large one, but the feeling remains the same. Finishing my movement exercises in my armor, I fired up its internal computer systems and had them begin to run a full diagnostic, to see if anything was amiss and needed my attention. As this happened, Lucia entered the warehouse, using the normal entrance and not a magical one, since I showed her the physical location of the warehouse some time ago, which is just on the outskirts of Albany, in upstate New York. The factory itself having once been a lumber processing plant, but it eventually went out of business. That's when Fisk purchased it for whatever reason, and after I dealt with him found it was the perfect place to make my factory/laboratory. The moment she laid eyes on me, she stopped in her tracks. What? She shouted. Lucia, calm down. It's me, Victor, I said, using my magic to instantly make my armor's helmet appear in my left hand. Victor, she mused, looking me up and down. What is that you're wearing? Why my armor, my dear? I replied. For soon we will be going to war, I said. So, what do you think? It suits you, she said, stepping closer until she was in front of me. May I touch it? Sure, I said. Here, let me help, I spoke. I then wrapped my free hand around Lucia's waist and picked her up and pulled her close to me. The reason I needed to pull her up being while in the armor my height becomes 7 feet. Now then, go ahead and touch it all you want, I said to her. Swallowing a lump in her throat, Lucia carefully moved her hands all over my armor, a curious and wondrous expression on her face the entire time, along with a hint of arousal. Victor, the first knew you were something, but this is just incredible. Why thank you, I replied. But it's still too early to be impressed, my dear, for this is only the beginning, I spoke. Doom has many more surprises in store, in many different forms, like this one. Leaning down, I captured Lucia's lips with my own and then dominated her mouth with my tongue. She moaned, deepening our kiss when she could, and trying to gain dominance in our kiss. But I would have none of that. I kept control and then broke the kiss when I wanted, leaving a small trail of saliva between our lips when I did. Surprise. I am an excellent kisser, I said. I fully agree, Lucia purred, her body squirming in my grasp. Looking into her eyes, I saw her hunger, so I did the only sensible thing. I put her down and put back on my helmet. For Doom controls his relationship and no one else. Plus, it's always good to leave the ladies wanting more. Wonderful as that was, we will need to continue later. I need to make sure there are no issues with my armor. Now then, your report. I spoke. Everything is on schedule, Lucia replied, me ignoring the obvious disappointment in her voice, since she'll get her dose of vitamin D sooner than she thinks. Production of the Doombits is proceeding on schedule. So is the stockpiling of non-perishable food items, medicines, and weapons, which are being snuggled into Latveria with no issues. I have begun digging up dirt on any within the United Nations who would try and interfere with Latveria once you assume the title of monarch and ruler. The same goes for officials posted at the Latverian embassies around the world. In accordance with your orders, I have also purchased stocks within various insurance companies and begun the process to create the one you asked me to, Zafiro, Lucia stated. Excellent, my dear. Very excellent. I spoke, going over my suit's full diagnostic report at the same time. For Doom can easily multitask. Seeing that there were no issues with my armor, I used my magic to send it to the display case I had built for it. I then turned to face Lucia and pulled in for another kiss. Breaking it, I moved my hands down to her ass and gave her cheeks a squeeze. Now that business is out of the way, where were we? I asked, Lucia shuddering in my arms. All according to plan. So with that I gave her the vitamin D she desperately wanted, giving her multiple shots for good measure. For as a doctor I need to be very thirsty. Oof. September 4th, 2005. Turning on the vortex mixer in front of me, I watched and waited as the rack of 12's vials situated on it finished well mixing. 15 minutes passed before they did. But once they did, I turned off the vortex mixer and removed the rack of vials from it. A smile on my face. For now I had 12 vials of perfected extremis. Yes, I said extremis. Perfect extremis at that. My own version. Which was no trouble to make. Once I copied all notes and research on the serum/virus from Maya Hansen, her pathetic boss Aldrich Killian, and their think tank/cult AIM. Then fixed any and all flaws in the product, before making my own modifications. Now here is the results of my hard work, which once again feels glorious to see with my own eyes. So, you're probably wondering why I made my own version of extremis in the first place. By the way, while AIM, Killian, and Maya are based on their MCU origins, the extremis itself is modeled after the first version from the comics. But back to my point. I made this serum/virus so I could give myself a boost. Because for all my current power, my body and overall physical abilities are still that of a base human. Albeit one who is in peak physical condition, but still a base human nonetheless. Which in Marvel without any sort of plot armor is a quick way to die. Considering all the physically enhanced individuals currently out there in the world, or those that will appear in the future. Like Thanos. And sure, my armor is something else. But there might come a situation where it ends up being unavailable. So in preparation for such a possible event, I decided to enhance myself physically, landing on the extremis serum to get the job done. Not to mention I am also preparing myself to flirt with the beauties of the Marvel Universe, a number of whom have enhanced physical capabilities. So if I am going to go after them and give their longing and unattended gardens a good plowing, then I need to be able to see the job through once I begin it. Because Doom has made it one of his duties to please all those booties. Just like I am now doing for Lucia. Taking one of the vials off the rack, I then picked up the sterilized syringe I had sitting on the small metal tray on my left. I then stuck it into the vial and loaded the extremis serum inside into it. Placing the vial down, I then set myself up for an injection into my brachial artery on my right arm. I then inhaled and exhaled before giving myself the injection. As I finished doing so, I placed the empty syringe back on the metal tray. I then just sat and waited for the serum to begin affecting me, which it did, a minute after injection. Feeling my entire body grow hot from the inside out, I grit my teeth as the heat steadily increased, rising higher and higher. Crack. Then I heard my bones starting to break. But I wouldn't let that best me, for Doom is not that weak, nor will he ever be. So enduring the pain, I allowed my entire body to undergo the changes, feeling myself getting rebuilt. Until finally it was over. Once it was, I felt like a new man. Stronger, faster, etc. Let's make sure I don't just feel this way, I said. I then stood up to my feet and went to go put myself through a battery of tests, to make sure my original extremis serum worked like it was supposed to. Oh, and as for how the serum was supposed to affect me, I modeled my original extremis serum off of the first version from the comics, while adding the technopathic abilities and enhanced mental calculation abilities of Tony Stark's modified extremis from the comics. As I put myself through all the tests I had devised, I smiled when I finished them. For my original extremis serum worked exactly as I had designed it to. I can now easily lift 20 tons, run up 300 mHp in 1 minute. My stamina is almost unlimited and my durability is nothing to sneeze at. I can regenerate from wounds within seconds. And though I'm not crazy enough to cut off my own limb, I feel I can regenerate them if I should need to. I have the claw-like pincers. I can breathe fire. I can even generate and throw electricity like Sidious. My mind is now capable of connecting to machinery and technology and communicating with it, while my brain now functions exactly like a supercomputer, just like the mutant sage from the comics. Speaking of her, if she exists here, then I wouldn't mind recruiting her to my side. I'll just add that to the other long list of things I need to handle. But right now I'm just enjoying the moment. Oh, and it seems the serum had an effect I didn't intend to occur. It has made me grow taller. My height has gone up from 1.88 meters, 6 feet 2 inches, to 1.91 meters, 6 feet 3 inches. Well, it's certainly not bad. That just means there is now more of Doom for the ladies to love. So really it is a gift for some, me included. For Doom likes his new height and all his other powers very much. Chapter 13, To War? A/N. So I've decided to make Doom's harem 7 women, and 7 only. No Wanda in the harem. She will be Doom's daughter. Here is the list of them. Susan Storm/Invisible Woman. Lucia von Bardosh. Selene Gallio. Medusa. Natasha Romanoff/Black Widow. Sylvija Sablinova/Silver Sable. Zora Vukovic/Victorious. February 13, 2006. Sitting on the couch, in the living room of my New York apartment, I watched a special news report, featuring Susan and the others, who were coming out to the world and revealing their fantastic powers. Ben having taken some time off from his training at Camartage to join the others. As for why the 4 of them were doing this, it is because they have decided to keep their powers. Not only that, but due to a certain incident they have decided to use their abilities for the benefit of mankind in their own little way. By the way, I had nothing to do with the incident that led them to this decision. It was simply one of those things that just happens. But to say I am not pleased would be a complete and utter lie, especially since I am on such friendly terms with the Fantastic Four, unlike many other versions of Doom. Friendly terms I plan to keep. But should they ever choose to stand against me, well, let's just say I hope that scenario never takes place. I continued watching the special news report for a bit longer before changing the channel. Then I idled around for a few hours before heading to Lucia's apartment to pick her up, since the 2 of us have been invited to a party tonight. The location: the Baxter Building. Arriving arm in arm, the 2 of us met up with the 4 who planned this party to celebrate their coming out to the entire world. As things got into full swing, we mingled, ate, and simply enjoyed each other's company. Though I could feel Susan staring at me, no matter how hard she tried to hide it, as the night went on. Scanning her surface thoughts with my telepathy told me how she was slightly aroused while looking at me. I also felt her jealousy whenever Lucia and I showed our new closeness. Honestly, Susan is worrying her pretty little head for nothing. There is more than enough Doom for women to go around. But I can't say I don't enjoy seeing her jealous side rear its ugly head. It makes her all the more cuter in my eyes. Eventually the party began winding down. When it did, I decided to speak up. "Attention everyone," I said, drawing all eyes towards me. "Thank you. Now then, I have an announcement to make. For the foreseeable future, Lucia and I will be unreachable. There is trouble in our homeland Latveria, and because of this we have both decided to return there to offer our assistance in dealing with the issues at hand. And by issues I mean the current monarch Fortunov, his family, and most of the current Latverian government. For all my preparations are finally complete. So it is time for them all to feel the full might of Doom." "Victor, that sounds dangerous. Are you sure you and Lucia should go alone? Perhaps we can come along and assist," Reed suggested. "Thank you for your offer, Dr. Richards, but that will not be necessary," Lucia retorted. "Besides, given your new celebrity status and circumstances, I doubt the United States government will allow you to leave the country to interject in another's matters. Though the offer is appreciated." "Yes, it truly is," I said. "But I do not need nor want the Four's help, especially given what I am about to do. So that's exactly why I waited until they announced their status to the world before putting the plan to save my country into motion. Sorry, not sorry, F4. But none shall stand in the path of Doom achieving his goals." "Oh, understood," Reed replied. "I wish you luck then." "Yeah, what Stretch said," Ben added. "Good luck," Johnny said. "Yes, good luck to you both," Susan spoke. "Once more thank you all," I said. Once I did, the party quickly ended. Lucia and I then took out leave. But before we could start making our way home, Susan came after us. Turning to face her, I looked her in the eyes. "Yes, Susan?" I asked. "Victor, please, be careful," she said, worry in her voice as she closed the distance between us. "Worry not, Susan. I shall be fine. But until we meet again, here is a little gift to remember me by," I said. I then leaned down and planted a quick kiss on Susan's lips, leaving her stunned. Ignoring her look of disbelief, Lucia and I then truly took our leave. For we needed to get home and get some rest. Because tomorrow we were heading for war. February 14, 2006. It's here. The day I have been preparing for the last 4 years, in earnest, has finally arrived. The day when I start my campaign to remove the rot that has taken root in my home country Latveria, and it into a shining jewel that will blind any who look upon it. Wearing my armor, my hands folded behind my back like Morpheus from the Matrix, I stood on a catwalk and stared out at the legions of Doombots before me. Lucia standing on my right, dressed in a battlesuit, made with some of the remaining vibranium we purchased from Clay after I created my own armor. Image here, which she's most definitely earned. "So, today is the day," Lucia spoke, breaking the silence. "Yes, today is the day," I replied. "Now, let us begin. Time to make it a very fucking red Valentine's Day." Using my technopathic powers, I connected to every single one of the Doombits. I then raised my left hand and opened up multiple portals to various strategic locations all around Latveria. Then I gave one simple command. "Forward," I exclaimed. When I did, my legions of Doombots started marching forward and entering through their designated portals. Once they were all through their portals, I closed them. I then opened up a portal behind me and Lucia and we turned to face it, then stepped through without any hesitation, heading to take back our homeland. Third person, POV. His hand still folded behind his back. Victor stood atop a hill. A gentle breeze blowing, he looked out at the landscape of his home country, Latvia, taking it in, enjoying a view he had not seen since he left of the United States almost 10 years ago at the young age of 17. A trip Victor honestly did not want to take, but he knew he had to, in order to gain the power to save his homeland, which he now had. So now it was time to get down to business. Once his nostalgia was sated, Victor became all about business. Focusing his gaze, the man eyed a collection of buildings surrounded by a barbed wire fence, where two groups of people were residing. The first group were military personnel, soldiers in the Latvian army. At least that's what they called themselves. But in reality those so-called soldiers were nothing more than thugs that enforced the will of King Vladimir and his followers on the ordinary people of the country, who were the second group, consisting of men, women, children, and those all of ages. They were dressed in tattered rags, looks of horror and anger etched onto their faces. Many of him were sickly and malnourished, but that was to be expected, given the place Victor was looking at was an internment/prison camp, one of just man Vladimir and his followers had set up around Latvia, where they would put anyone who questioned them, not just the people they didn't like the members of the Romani Zafiro clan Victor and his parents belonged to. As Victor continued staring at the camp, a deep and primal anger bubbled up inside of him and rose to the surface, but he also felt his resolve strengthen even further. Yes, I am definitely doing the right thing. I am on the path I must take, Victor thought. Right after he did, Lucia contacted him over his comms. Victor, everything is in place, she began. The Doombots now have control of all routes along the Latvian borders. In addition, the entire country's communication infrastructure is under our command, Lucia explained. Excellent, Victor replied. Now, this is where the fun begins. For those two things were the last items that needed to be taken care of before Victor could launch his revolution campaign in Latvia in earnest. For he didn't want any of the bastards he was going to show a fate than hell to slipping away, or calling for any outside assistance or interference. Oh no, Doom will not allow that. Those scum are going to take their punishment up the ass without any Vaseline. That's a promise. Well then, let us begin. He spoke. Doom then used his technopathy to order all his Doombots who were in attack position to mobilize, the man himself moving out as well. It was time for people to learn of the one called Dr. Doom. Chapter 14, Liberation of Latvia. I. Third person, POV. Standing before a lineup of prisoners, the head of the internment/prison camp, one Captain Klaus, moved his gaze from side to side and overlooked all those in front of him. Several soldiers under his command surrounding the prisoners he was looking at, their Russian-manufactured AK-47 rifles pointed at them. After an entire minute of looking, Klaus stopped. All right, I will only ask this once. Klaus began, speaking in the native Latvian language. One of my men had some of his food stolen, and based on the accounts of all were near him at the time the incident occurred. So I ask again, who took it? No one spoke up as Klaus finished speaking. Hey, answer the captain when is talking to you. One of the random soldiers shouted at the people, firing his AK-47 into the air once. No. This action in turn caused the people to begin screaming in fear and cowering, huddling together for protection as well. Soldier, enough. Klaus shouted, looking the soldier who fired his weapon dead in the eye as he did. Yes, captain. Forgive me. The soldier spoke, bowing his head in an apologetic manner. It's all right. I understand the vigor of youth. I was once young like you, Klaus replied. But don't let it happen again, he said in a cold voice. Sir. Yes, sir, the young soldier replied. He then lifted up his head and got back into position. Good, Klaus said. He then turned his attention back to the people. Hey, allow me to apologize. My subordinate got overeager. I did not mean for it to happen. Though if someone had spoken up when I asked, it never would have. So I ask you all again. Who took the food? Me. It was me. A young boy of no more than 10 said, stepping forward from the huddled crowd of people, right up to Klaus. I see. So it was you, boy. Klaus mused. Well then, have anything else to say for yourself? Hearing Klaus's question, the boy spit in his direction, his spit landing on the captain's left cheek. Screw you, coward, the boy exclaimed. And you call yourself a soldier? You're nothing more than one of Vladimir's lapdogs. Seeing this, all of the prisoners huddled together were stunned. Meanwhile, the soldiers began looking at the boy in anger, the same as their captain, who now had a vein bulging on his neck and bloodshot red eyes. Why, you little impudent shit, Klaus shouted at the top of his lungs. He then moved to backhand the boy with his right hand, but right before he could, a figure crashed down from the sky right behind Klaus and grabbed his right arm, pulling it back, allowing an audible pop to ring out through the air, the figure having broken Klaus's right arm. Ack! Klaus screamed in agony. Holding his broken right arm with his left, the man fell to the ground and started flailing and rolling on it. Captain Klaus! All of the soldiers who were present shouted. Meanwhile, the prisoners/civilians all remained stunned. Even the boy who stood up to Klaus was left speechless by what just happened. Klaus continued rolling around for another minute before stopping. When he did, he heard a male voice speak to him. Pathetic, it said. But then again, I would expect no less from worthless trash. Hearing those words, Klaus felt his anger rise again. So with that he fought through the pain of his broken arm and turned to face the direction of the male voice. Why you? Klaus began, only to stop when he saw who he was speaking to. A towering figure, with a long dark green cape flowing behind its back. Just looking at the being before him, Klaus felt the cold embrace of death. Any words he had were caught in his throat. It seems you know when to shut up when your betters are before you. Good, the man said, being none other than Doom. You, what, are, me? Doom interrupted. Why, it's quite simple. I am your end. I am Doom, he exclaimed. Victor shouted, drawing the attention of the entire camp to his direction. From the remaining Latvarian soldiers to the other prisoners, soon all eyes were on him. Then once they were, Victor picked up his left foot and slammed it down onto Klaus's chest, sending it straight through it, literally crushing the army captain under his foot. Before Klaus even realized it, he was dead. As the light faded from his eyes, Victor removed his foot from his chest and then lightly kicked it to throw off any blood, bones, or body parts that gotten stuck on his armor due to his actions, since he would not allow such filth to remain on his armor. Once his foot was clean, Victor placed it back down on the ground, though immediately after he did so several of the soldiers began firing at him. Die fucker! You killed our captain, you bastard! This and several other profanities in varying languages were all shouted at Victor as a hail of bullets from several directions came towards him and struck him. Yet they did absolutely nothing. Upon noticing this, the soldiers became utterly shocked. For no matter how many of their bullets hit Victor, he remained entirely undamaged. From his armor to his cape, he was perfectly and utterly fine. What? One of the soldiers cried out. How is possible? Simple. It is because I am Doom, Victor replied. Now, let us end this. I have better places to be and more important things to do. He spoke. A moment after he did so, Victor used his technopathy to contact the small force of Doombots he had brought with him to this internment/prison camp and ordered them to attack. Several seconds later they began executing their creator's order. Appearing in the air over the camp, using the jets installed in their feet, the Doombots flew into the camp and started massacring the soldiers without any hesitation. From ripping them apart using their pincer-like claws, to blasting them away using their energy cannons and rockets, within just a few moments the Doombots made short work of any and all threats. Then after doing so they began gathering up the bodies, and collecting anything of value inside of the camp, all on Doom's orders. Meanwhile their creator was standing in front of the prisoners of the camp, who were slowly but surely gathering around him. Once they were all present, the murmurs in the crowd stopped, and then one man asked Victor a question. Who are you? As I have said, my name is Doom. And like you, I was born and raised in this land. I love it and cherish it. And I hate to see what it is becoming under the leadership of that fool and tyrant Vladimir and his ilk. So with that in mind, I have decided a change is needed. That is why I have come to liberate our people, as well as turn the country we all call our motherland into something else. Something better. No, something the world has never seen before. Victor spoke passionately, all eyes on him as he did. That is my mission. And now I ask all of you to help me with that. For a country is nothing without its people. Vladimir does not understand this, but I do. So, will you all stand with me? Will you all stand with Doom? Victor said. He then began waiting for a response to his words, though the only thing he got in return was a deathly silence. That lasted until one voice broke it. I will stand with you. It was the voice belonging to the young man who had stood up to Klaus, and was going to pay for it before Victor had intervened and saved him. Stepping forward, the young boy looked Victor in his eyes, Victor doing the same to the young man, seeing fear in them, but also a fierce determination and an intelligence. Intriguing, Victor thought. Tell me, young man, who are you and why have you decided to stand with me? Victor asked, curious about this young boy's motivations. Sir, my name is Christoph Vanad. And the reason I seek to stand with you is because I believe in what you are saying, but also for revenge. I want to see Zorba Fortunov dead, for he is the reason my mother is. The now named Christoph spoke, a few tears beginning to leak out of his eyes as he did, which didn't faze Victor in the slightest. What did, however, was the boy himself. Considering he was now face to face with one of the characters in the Marvel universe that had one of the most intimate relationships with the original Victor Von Doom, the man having taken Christoph in as his adopted son in the comics, after Zorba Fortunov killed his mother, similar to the current Christoph's situation. But really, to think I would meet him under these circumstances, not to mention his mother is already dead, Victor thought, meaning Christoph likely had no family left. And given the way he's acting for a 10-year-old kid, Victor is sure this Christoph likely has the same level of intelligence as the one from the comics. So taking that and everything else into account, Victor is sure of what he must do. So this is what my master meant by my children, huh? Victor thought, a wry smile on his face under his helmet. Internally he shrugged his shoulders, since it looks like this is fate's plan for him, and it's not a bad one at all. I see, Victor replied to Christoph. Well then, Christoph, I welcome you, and thank you for your assistance in making my plans into a reality, he said. Now, wipe the rest of your tears away, for crying when in battle can lead to horrendous mistakes. Save them for after we achieve victory. Understood, sir, Christoph replied. He then used his hands to wipe away the rest of his tears. Christoph then stepped forward. Seeing this, several other people also did, since most of them couldn't very well let a young boy step up to fight for their country alone. If they did, it would put them to shame as adults. a shame none of them wanted to feel. As though several people stepped up, more and more did, until eventually the entire prisoner population of the camp was standing with Doom, ready and willing to follow him. Seeing this, he smiled proudly under his mask. People of Latveria, I thank you for this, and I promise you will not regret your decision this day, Doom loudly exclaimed. Now then, let us go and take back our country. Yeah, the people surrounding Doom began to shout. Victor having begun to reignited their wills, passions, and fighting spirits, which he planned to do from the beginning. Since without the people on his side, how could he truly call himself their leader? For Victor would be no tyrant, but a true king. After the people settled down, Victor began implementing some of his pre-planned strategies with the assistance of the Doombots he had brought with him, giving weapons to those able-bodied enough to use them, while also securing the protection for those who could not fight. He also contacted Lucia and scheduled a rendezvous. Once Victor left the prison camp, Christoph and his fellow countrymen marching right behind him, taking their first steps to a true liberation of their homeland Latveria. Chapter 15, Liberation of Latveria 2. Victor, POV. After me and the group I was leading left the prison camp, I began leading them to the rendezvous point where we would not only meet up with Lucia but others, including prisoners from other camps my Doombots had liberated during this first wave of attacks, along with several members of the Latverian resistance, whom also assisted my Doombots in their attacks during this first strike, from what Lucia informed me during our brief communication earlier. As my group continued its trek, I had the Doombots who were with us constantly arranged in a defensive formation around the people. For as the one who asked them to join me in this fight, and as their future leader and ruler, I will allow no harm to come to them. While my robotic soldiers handling that, I chatted with the people themselves, wanting to hear and learn about exactly what they have been experiencing under the rule of Vladimir and his ilk. But when I got them to open up and speak to me, the more I heard, the angrier I became. So much so I almost started to see nothing but red, and got the idea to simply fly to the Latverian capital and rip Vladimir off his throne with my bare hands, before starting to inflict the pain on him he had so casually caused to so many others. Though I didn't, since that would be worse for the country in the long run. No, if I am going to do this I need to do it the right way, no matter my personal feelings on the matter. So with that in mind I reined in my anger and fury, and instead put it towards completing the plan for my country I had already set in motion, where when all was said and done Vladimir would truly end up experiencing a fate worse than death. A moment I can hardly wait to see. Moving on. 2 days after we left the prison camp we reached the rendezvous point, an entrance in a mountain that led to a series of former underground mining shafts that the resistance had converted to use as their primary base of operations. Arriving at the tunnel entrance I stepped forward first. Immediately after I did, several figures, wielding automatic rifles, stepped out of the shadow of the tunnel, their weapons aimed directly at me. Halt! One of them exclaimed. Lower your weapons. I am Doom, I said. And if you do not know the name then contact Lucia von Bardosh and she will explain to you who I am. I spoke. That won't be necessary. Lucia herself spoke up, stepping out of the shadow of the tunnel and right up to me. Victor, good to see you are in one piece. The same to you my dear, I said. Then once we exchanged pleasantries the other resistance fighters lowered their weapons. Once they did everyone began entering through the tunnel entrance. We were then escorted through the tunnels by the resistance members who had been sent to meet up, eventually arriving in a huge underground cavern, where I saw multiple people about, from resistance fighters to refugees. I even noted a medical station and food distribution station, as well as several of my Doombots patrolling about. Victor, if you'll follow me please. There are some people who would like to meet you, Lucia said a moment after we arrived. Of course, I said. I then bid a quick farewell to those who I had been leading, and began following Lucia, Christoph following right behind me. Since although it has only been about 3 days since we met, the young boy and I have bonded quite a bit, due in a large part to me being able to keep up with Christoph's intellect. For just like in the comics, the boy is a gifted super genius. I've explained to him a few advanced theories relating to several sciences over the past couple of days, and after just a small bit of help from me he's already started to comprehend them, telling me that with the right guidance Christoph can become something magnificent. So that is why I have already decided to be the one to give him that guidance, because I want to see a young man like Christoph reach his full potential. Noticing him, Lucia gave Christoph a passing glance but chose not to say anything, which I appreciated, because if I thought for a moment he would get in the way of this meeting she is leading us to, I would have asked him to remain behind, but I can tell he won't, which is why I am letting him tag along. In no time at all the three of us reached a large tent, with 2 guards posted out in front of it. Upon seeing us they opened the flaps of the tent, allowing us entry, so the 3 of us headed inside. Once we were, I took a look around and immediately realized we were in the Resistance Command Center. There are maps posted up all around, attached boards, photos showcasing strategic spots around Latveria, which I investigated myself before coming here, not to mention the big table in the middle of the room with several people standing around it. You would have to be a fool to not realize this is the Resistance Command Center. The moment the 3 of us entered, everyone around the table stopped talking and turned their gazes in our direction. A moment of silence then passed before one of the people stepped forward and looked right at me. He is an older man in his 50s, with a full head of white hair and a full white beard. Looking at him I immediately knew who he was thanks to the memories of the original Victor of this world. Boris. a member of the Zafiro clan my parents belonged to, and the man who raised me after they passed away and before I left the United States to gain the power I needed to return to Latveria and free it from its oppressors. Victor, is that you? Boris asked. Not saying a word, I used my magic to teleport my helmet into my right hand and then simply nodded. A smile on my face. Yes Boris, it is I. Just like I said all those years ago when I left, I have returned. I spoke. For the original Doom of this world did promise such a thing. Now I am making good on that promise. Oh Victor, look at how much you've grown. Boris happily spoke. He then rushed up to me and hugged me returning it. As he separated, his gaze turned to Christoph. Oh, who is this, your son? He asked. Boris having no idea how close he was to the truth. No Boris, he is not. I replied. Well, not yet officially, since I have already decided to adopt Christoph after this entire ordeal is over. His name is Christoph Vanad, one of the prisoners I rescued and brought here. I explained. Good to meet you, sir. Once again, my name is Christoph Vanad. Christoph spoke to Boris. So well-mannered, and you have that same curious look in your eye that Victor did when he was a child. It feels as I have just become 10 years younger in an instant. Boris happily spoke. A smile on his face. While that is all well and good Boris, let us get our business concluded first before you continue with your reunion. A female voice spoke up. When she did, I looked in her direction, finding myself gazing at a woman my own age, with long dark brown hair and matching dark brown eyes. Yes, you are right, Boris replied. He then walked back over to the table, me joining him, walking right up to the woman who just spoke. Victor Werner von Doom. A pleasure, I said, taking her right hand in my grasp and planting a quick kiss on the back of it before releasing it. My, what a gentleman you are, Victor, the man replied. And it is a pleasure to meet you as well. My name is Zora Vukovic, leader of the Latverian resistance, as your service, she revealed, me keeping my face impassive, while inside I was smiling. Since Zora Vukovic is yet another character from Marvel who has a special relationship with Doom. She was his fiancée, and even his herald when he obtained the powers of Galactus. She was also a champion of the people of Latveria. Looks like she already has the latter part well in hand. Lucia has spoken highly of you over the past couple of years. Nice to finally put a face to the name. The feeling is mutual, I replied, given that Lucia had told me about the Latverian resistance, but never in too many details, even less about their leader. All she said was that they were a great warrior, and standing in front of Zora now I can see those words to be true. So, shall we get to it? I asked. What is this we you speak of? A man suddenly spoke up. When he did, I turned in his direction and saw an angry and frustrated expression on his face. Torvald, not this again, Boris said, giving the man named Torvald a stern glare. A/N, Torvald is not an OC but an actual character from the comics, which he didn't seem fazed by. No Boris, I will not sit by and idly watch as this man who ran away simply comes in and tries to act as if he's some great savior, Torvald retorted. He hasn't been here fighting. He hasn't been here shedding blood or sweat. He's been America, safe and sound. What right does he have to come in here and think he can lead us? Huh, he exclaimed, sending the entire tent into utter silence, which I let sit for a few seconds before breaking it. Torvald, is it? I asked him. He nodded his head. Okay then. Well, on some of the things you have just said I have to agree with. I spoke. It's true. I did leave our homeland. I have been in America, I admitted, making Torvald smirk. However, let's get one thing clear. I began, excluding some of my magic power into the air. I have not been idle. I went to America to gain the power that was needed to finally free our people, to finally help them achieve all that they can be. And don't you ever again question me again in that regard. For if you do, I won't hesitate to end you. Do you understand? Sweating a bit, the smirk now gone from his face, Torvald nodded. Good, I said, reining in my power. Now then, it is true I plan to lead our people once this is all over. If you have an issue with that, then that is your opinion. All I ask before you cement it is that you watch my actions a bit, to see if I am truly unfit to rule. I spoke. Now then, let us get back to business. Well said, Victor. Zora spoke. Thus the meeting itself finally got underway, which was a planning session on how the resistance should move thanks to the huge victory they just accomplished with the aid of me, Lucia, and my legions of Doombots. Naturally I gave my thoughts and opinions, which were well received, even by Torvald. So in the end everyone agreed to go with the plans I had suggested, exactly as I had planned. Once we did, the meeting was adjourned, leaving me time to finally catch up with Boris, a man who was family. Chapter 16, Liberation of Latveria 3, Latveria, September 13, 2006. Third person, POV. Seated inside one of the numerous meeting rooms located within the royal palace, several individuals were having a heated discussion. The individuals in question being the leaders of the country of Latveria itself, including its current monarch and King Vladimir Fortunov, along with his two sons, and heirs to the throne, Rudolfo Fortunov, the crown prince of Latveria and Vladimir's eldest son, and Zorba Fortunov, Rudolfo's younger brother, and the second son of King Vladimir. Now, as for what the group was discussing, it was the current state of their country, namely the fact that all of them were in danger of being ousted from the positions of power they held within the country, because for the past 7 months the internal state of Latveria had been undergoing a change. To put it simply, it was currently in the midst of a revolution that was bent on getting rid of Vladimir and his allies. The king and his allies having come to realize this several months ago when the group that called themselves the Latvian Resistance, though Vladimir and his ilk simply called them terrorists, had made a change in their tactics. No longer now did they simply attack, and then slink back into the shadows. Instead now they proudly fought out in the open, assisted by weaponry and robots that put the Latvian military to shame. But that wasn't what truly frightened Vladimir, his family, and their supporters. No, what truly scared them all was the emergence of a new central figure and leader of the Latvian resistance. A man who called himself Doom. An apt name, considering over the past 7 months since he appeared. Doom had sent many of Vladimir's, and by extension the royal family's, biggest supporters to meet their doom. By his hands. Like death incarnate he ended the lives of those he sought out as easily as breathing, which Vladimir and his remaining supporters hoped would allow them to paint Doom as the villain. But they never even got a chance to try their plan out, since the people of the country had come to love Doom and see him as a savior almost immediately after he appeared. Now after all these months were completely rallied behind the man, which thanks to that, and several other factors, had allowed Doom and those who follow him to effectively take Latvia for themselves. Now Vladimir's regime only still had control of a very small portion of the country, centered around the capital city where he and those remaining loyal to him are currently located. But they know Doom and his followers are coming for them. Hence the meeting. Flee. We must flee. A general of the army spoke up. Coward. A different general shouted. To flee from simply one man is pathetic. I agree. Rudolfo spoke up. Instead of fleeing from this Doom, let us throw everything we have at him and finally put an end to his existence. For once he falls, then so shall this so-called resistance, and the people will come back to their senses. Lest we need to remind them why we rule in the first place. He said. So foolish, brother. Zorba said. Do you not see your plan would turn Doom into nothing but a martyr? Then things would get even worse. Then what are we supposed to do, brother? Rudolfo shouted. Negotiate? Don't make me laugh. I think we all know Doom is not a man who will want to negotiate with us. I was not going to suggest that. I was going to say we call upon our allies for assistance, Zorba suggested, getting murmurs of agreement from those inside of the room. Not to be rude, my prince, but do you really think that is the best option? An advisor questioned. Considering how this resistance has been one step ahead of us at every turn, he said, which was true, for ever since the Latvian resistance changed its battle tactics they had been tearing apart Vladimir's forces, hitting their supply convoys, and liberating one camp or prison after another. It was almost like the resistance knew their plans almost immediately after they made. But Vladimir had checked for spies, and had found none. After disposing of any he thought might be coarse, he even ordered a search for any surveillance technology, but had found nothing. Yet the resistance still knew of his and his people's plans, infuriating the man to no end. How is this happening? Vladimir angrily thought. He was king. This was his country and his people, yet none man was taking everything that belonged to him. Doom, when I get my hands on you I'll make sure you'll be begging for the sweat embrace of death before I am done. Vladimir seethed, a look of pure anger on his face. High unlikely. Considering what you just spoke of, Vladimir will be happening the other way around. A voice suddenly spoke in the room, shocking everyone inside of it. Since they all knew who that voice belonged to, they had heard it on the radio, and on the television screen. It was the voice of Doom. Doom, here. How did he get in? Summon the guards, quickly. The advisors and generals inside of the room shouted out orders, and fell into complete chaos. Until Vladimir spoke up. Silence. He shouted, quieting all present in the room. Immediately after he did so, the flat screen on the back wall of the room turned on, and showcased an image of Doom, who was sitting on a throne, his hands clasped in front of him. Seeing this, those inside of the meeting room began to murmur, and feel dread, since they all recognized the throne Doom was seated on. It was the one in the throne room of the castle they were in. You dare? Vladimir shouted. Doom does dare you, pathetic man. Doom replied, for this is no longer your throne, but mine. He said, guards, to the throne room. Go and bring me that disrespectful peasant so that I may deal with him myself. Vladimir shouted. Yet no response came. Guards, guads. Vladimir shouted several more times, but got no response no matter how much he yelled, which led to him getting out of his chair and heading over to the door to open it. Only as soon as Vladimir got close enough the door swung open and hit him square in his face, breaking his nose. Ack! Vladimir shouted, falling on his back, blood flowing out his broken nose. While this happened, several people, and Doombots, entered into the room and surrounded Vladimir, his sons, and his advisors, shocking them all. For the people alongside the Doombots were those from the Latvian resistance, including one of their leaders, Zora Vukovic. Standing above Vladimir, she had a serene smile on her face, just as she kicked the man right between his legs, using her left foot. Ack! The man screamed, as his nuts were destroyed. But Zora cared not for his cries of pain. Instead she hoisted him up and threw up back into his chair, before smacking him across the face with the butt of her Glock 19 pistol. She then spoke. Watch the screen and listen. Don't speak, Zora ordered. Yet Vladimir ignored her. He tried to speak, only to get smacked in the face with the butt of Zora's gun again, which she continued to do until Vladimir followed her instructions to shut up and listen. Once he did. Doom, who had been watching events transpiring, finally spoke up again. Good, Victor said. Now to get down to business. Business? What business could we have with terrorists like you? Rudolfo asked. Only to get slapped him the face by a Doombit. You are mistaken, you pathetic worm. It is you who are the terrorists, while me, and those who follow and stand beside me, are in the right. Doom explained. And since that is the case, there is only one thing left to do. Rid our country of you lot once and for all. You? Do you think you'll get away with this? Zorba shouted. Killing an entire royal family of a country. The world will come for you, head. He exclaimed. No, I think not. Doom replied. A moment after he did so, multiple new and smaller windows then opened on the flat screen, some displaying videos, while others displayed bank account records, leading to Zorba shutting right up, along with his father, brother, and the rest of their closest allies in the room. For the videos on display on the flat screen showcased those under their command committing atrocities, such as killing innocent civilians, along with numerous other crimes, while the displayed bank records statements showed almost everyone in the room that allied with Vladimir and his family, including they themselves, had taken money and been involved in various illegal dealings. As you can plainly see, I have records of the crimes you so-called leaders have committed, not simply against your own people but against the world. And I am not trying to bluff, all this information is entirely accurate, which is why I will be handing it over to the United Nations as soon as this is all over, so that no issues may arise as I start my new life as Latveria's monarch. Doom spoke, for he was all set to become king. Those in the resistance had agreed to help make him so, given the leadership and ideas she shared with them for Latveria, ever since he joined them back in February. No, this can't be. Vladimir spoke. Stop deluding yourself. This is real, and it is happening. Doom spoke. Along with this, he said. Then a moment after Doom spoke, another set of new windows opened up on the flat screen, this time showcasing live video feeds. Feeds which detailed the people of Latveria marching on and taking down any strongholds in the country that still remained loyal to Vladimir and his faction, with the assistance of Victor's Doombots, of course. There was even a group marching on the capital itself. No, 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 Vladimir screamed. Yes, Victor said. Now you know the power Doom possesses. He spoke, relishing in the fear and despair he saw in the eyes of Vladimir and his allies, making Victor feel once again how it is to be Doom. Chapter 17, All Hail Doom. Third person, POV. On the night of September 13, 2006, King Vladimir Fortunov, his family, and any and all of their supporters were finally completely removed from power within the country of Latveria, thus clearing the way for its greatest monarch ever, Victor Werner von Doom. A man who would not only change his country, but in time the entire world. September 16, 2006. Victor, POV. Two Doombots following behind me. I walked through the halls of the castle I was in, noting any and all damages I spotted, while several other Doombots surveyed the rest of the castle and its immediate property up to a 15-mile radius in each direction. Why, you ask? Because I am going to repair this castle and make it better than it ever was, for it is going to be my new home. I've even already given it a new name, Castle Doom. Of course that's the same name this place had in the comics, but as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. A rule I am also applying to the rest of Latveria, having already renamed the capital city Doomstadt, in honor of my mother Cynthia, whose soul I plan on saving as soon as I can. But there is still much to do and preparations to be made before that. After all, only 3 days have passed since Vladimir, his family, and the rest of their supporters were permanently ousted from power and I became king of Latveria. Right now the country is in a time of transition, which can be when one is in the most danger. Thus, for my homeland's sake, and those of the people who helped place me squarely upon the throne, I must remain cautious and vigilant, as well as responsible. I continued my personal survey of the castle until I finished, my last stop being the throne room, where I happened to spot Boris and Christoph, along with Lucia and Zora, all 4 having accompanied me during my trip here, the former 2 because I invited them, while the latter 2 invited themselves, stating they could not allow me, their new king and ruler, to undertake such an endeavor alone. Really, those 2 are worrying for nothing, but I guess since given their new positions, which have them working for me and Latveria as a whole, they have grounds to worry a bit. Lucia and Zora new jobs being the following. The former I have named my prime minister, just like she was for Latveria in the comics, only unlike in the comics she's not working with American supervillains. Though Lucia has already begun working on a plan to completely overhaul the government and our foreign relation policies in concert. She's also working on cleaning up the Latverian diplomatic corps, because we cannot have snakes out there ruining the new Latveria new name. Now as for Zora, given her experience in leading the now former Latverian resistance for years, I have named her Latveria new Minister of Defense, who is already working on building a new and proper Latverian defense force. For although my Doombots are great, I do not want them to become Latveria main army. I want the people themselves having a say in how their country is protected. Thus the plan I have in place is for half the LDF, Latverian Defense Forces, to be made up of flesh and blood soldiers and have to be made up of my robotic creations, satisfying everyone's needs. The soldiers who join the LDF in particular, since it will give them a purpose and a steady source of income. 2 things many of my fellow countrymen desperately need right now, but only for right now. Because once several of my plans come to fruition, my people will never have to worry about such trivial things again. Though one step at a time here. Joining the others, they also slightly bowed to me, making me sigh, since I have told them all time and time again not to bow to me outside of official ceremonies, even though I am now the king of the country. Yet they do it anyway. It's a corny joke, but with them I don't mind. Greetings, Victor, Zora said, after all four of them stood back up. Hello everyone, I said. So, what are your opinions of my new home? I'm curious to hear what you think. It's a dump. But if you fix it up, Mr. Victor, then I'm sure it will end up being amazing. Christoph bluntly spoke. Which I appreciate. I find his straightforward answers refreshing. Thank you for that, Christoph, I told him. And I assume the rest of you share the same opinion. The others nodded their heads in agreement. Well then, guess that means I better get to work on my home improvements, I said. Don't you mean having your Doombots get to work on your home improvements? Lucia jokingly spoke, eliciting a laugh from all of us. Touché, I said. Anyway, on a different note, Christoph, may you come with me? There is a private matter I wish to discuss with you. Sure, he replied. So with that, the two of us walked off from the others, me leading the young Vaned to one of the balconies with a view of Doomstadt. The moment we arrived, he got a look of childlike wonderment on his face. Beautiful sight, isn't it? It is, Christoph replied. He then turned to face me. So Mr. Victor, what did you want to speak with me about in private? Your future, I said. The truth is, Christoph, you remind me a lot of myself at your age. A young man gifted with incredible intelligence beyond his years, as well as a boy who lost his family far too early. Sure, I had Boris and the other members of the Zafiro clan, but they truly could never replace my mother and father. Just like I know no one will ever be able to replace your mother. But if you're up for it, I would like to make you a part of my family. What are you saying? He asked. I'm saying I would like to adopt you. I want you to formally become my son. I finally spoke, feeling now is the right time to ask him. Christoph's eyes went wide at my proposition. Are you sure? Yes, I easily replied. It's one of the fewest things I have ever been entirely sure of in my life. I want you to become my son. But the choice is entirely up to you. And just so you know, should you accept my offer, you will have responsibilities, I said. Like facing danger. For as the son of Doom, Christoph will end up with a target on his back. Yet even with that being the case, I still want him as family. For if anyone tries to harm him, I kill them quickly. Because I will do anything for my family. Of course you don't have to answer now. Take some time and think about it, I said. No, I've already decided, Christoph said, looking me in my eyes. I want to be your son. Well then, all right. Welcome to the family, I happily spoke. Having just become Daddy Doom. Never thought this day would come so quickly, but oh well. After Christoph agrees to my proposal, we returned to where the others were and told them the news. All of them congratulating us. Victor, to think this is the kind of man you've become. If your parents were here, I'm sure they'd be very proud. Boris spoke. Thank you, Boris, I replied. So, having not even taken a queen and our new king already has an heir. Zora mused. Well, if you're offering to fill the position, I'll take you up on it, I replied. Oh my, what a tempting offer, your majesty, Zora replied. Okay, you two, enough flirting, there are things that need to get done. Boris spoke, interrupting our flirting. But that's fine. There will be plenty of time for it in the future. But Boris is right, there are things that need to get done. Like preparing for my coronation and announcing to everyone there is a new monarch in town. Yours truly. So getting in a move on, our little group left Castle Doom and returned to the old royal palace, which will now function as the new central government building of Latveria. Since unlike the original Doom, I see no reason to blow up a perfectly good building. After making our return, we got back to work, planning my coronation, while also making sure Christoph became my son in every sense of the word legally. Which didn't take too long at all. Thus we found ourselves fully focusing on the coronation event. Until eventually a month passed and the day of the promised time finally arrived, October 30th, 2006. Third person, POV. Standing within massive crowds and groups all over their country, the people of Latveria focused their attention on giant flat-screen monitors that had been set up, all to witness the day's events, which the entire country had heard about. The coronation and crowning of their new king and ruler, Victor Werner von Doom. A man who has helped to bring down Vladimir and his regime. A man who had been providing aid in the form of food, clothes, medicine, housing, etc., ever since he arrived in Latveria all those months ago. A man who was already working to truly better Latveria. The people had heard of and seen his dad's firsthand. So with trepidation they waited for the broadcast that would truly signal the end of the old age of Latveria and the beginning of the new one. Victor had begun. As the clock struck 12 p.m. sharp, the moment everyone had been waiting for began. The screens all across the country buzzed to life, showcasing Victor, dressed in his armor, with an extravagant cape bearing the flag of Latveria imprinted on both it reading on his shoulders. He was standing on a makeshift stage, surrounded by Boris, Zora, Lucia, and several other high-ranking members of the former Latverian resistance who were now part of the new legitimate Latverian government. All of them dressed in formal attire. There were also two others on the stage, Rudolfo and Zorba Fortunov. Both men were on their knees, wearing full-body sets of chains. Several Doombots surrounding them, ready to strike if the brothers so much as even sneezed wrong. The two former royals looked worse for wear. Heavy bags under their eyes, unruly hair, full untouched bears, and their muscles looked diminished. Seeing people in such a state would normally elicit some sympathy, but the people of Latveria had none for their former princes, given all the atrocities they had committed against them. So with smiles on their faces the people of Latveria cheered at the current states of Rudolfo and Zorba, though they quieted down as Doom stepped forward. People of Latveria, you might already know my name by now, but for those who don't, it is Victor Werner von Doom. Like many of you, I was born and raised in this country, and also like many of you I suffered under the impression of the Vladimir regime. But I am here standing before you today to inform you that time is now over for good. I stand before you today not only as your fellow countryman but as your new king and leader. I am grateful you have entrusted me with such a position, and I will do my best to live up to your expectations. And should I ever end up turning into something similar to Vladimir, I ask that you rise up again and stroke me down. For without its people a country is nothing. Victor spoke. A lesson the Fortunov royal family never seemed to learn. So now they shall pay for their arrogance and callousness with their lives. Victor then raised his right arm into the air after she finished speaking. Once he did two Doombots, both wielding swords, each took up a position behind the two former princes. Upon seeing this, Doom swung his right arm downward. When he did, the two Doombots decapitated both princes without any hesitation, ignoring any and all of their protests. As the heads of Rudolfo and Zorba hit the stage, the people watching, and who were actually present, were stunned into silence. That is until one person spoke up and broke it. Yeah, all hail Doom, a random guy shouted. Once he did, another said the same thing. Then another, and another, until the entire crowd present physically at the coronation/execution began chanting the very same thing in unison. All hail Doom, all hail Doom, all hail Doom. Their chants grew louder and louder, but they were not the only ones who got this way. All across the country everyone began chanting that phrase. All hail Doom. Music to the one in question's ears. Now he was truly Latveria king, and it felt good. While Latveria celebrated a new era, so was someone else. But this person was entering an era of hell. Chained up in a cell, Doombots forcing him to watch the flat screen feed in front of him. Vladimir Fortunov was a wailing and crying mess, having just witnessed his own sons getting executed. Make it stop, he cried. Yet no one could hear his screams, nor would they answer his prayer, because now his very existence belonged to Doom, truly a fate worse than death. Chapter 18, World Reactions. January 4, 2007, New York City. Third person, POV. Making herself some breakfast, Susan Storm let her mind drift, mainly on her current station in life. Here she is, almost 2 years after gaining fantastic powers, a superhero, alongside her ex-boyfriend, her younger brother, and her ex-boyfriend best friend, who is now dating her own, one Alicia Masters. Since his fiancée dumped him after Ben and the others came out to the world about their powers and became the Fantastic Four, which was great. Though Susan could do a little less without all the crazy adventures they end up on, mostly thanks to Reed. But she takes the good work the bad, especially since she is now a worldwide celebrity, whose fame has allowed her to bring issue to cause she always thought were important, not to mention becoming a role model for women of all changes to look upon. Susan loved it. Yet there was one thing she couldn't let go of. The kiss Victor gave her when he and Lucia left for their home country Latveria, which had taken place close to a year ago, and there had been no contact from either of them since, which worried Susan to no end. So much so she has tried to use her new connections as a member of the Fantastic Four to get information on the current state of Latveria. Unfortunately that didn't pan out either, since the country was under a total information blackout, which only increased Susan's worry. She had half a mind to simply go to Latveria herself, but held back, for she knew her actions would cause trouble not only for herself but for the rest of her team, and Susan couldn't and wouldn't do that to them, not without a very good reason. So all she was left with was waiting. Damn it, Victor. Please be okay, Susan thought, her mind instantly going to the kiss on the night Victor left. Getting a light blush on her face, Susan shook her head. No brain. Don't go there, Susan thought. After all, that kiss likely meant nothing, since it was obvious to her Victor was with Lucia, and she wouldn't get in between them, no matter how much her body ached for another kiss from Victor. Deciding to get her mind off things before she full went down the rabbit hole, Susan focused all her attention back on cooking. Holy shit. That is until she heard Johnny screaming from the living room. Once she did, Susan headed in there, an annoyed expression on her face. Johnny, it's too early for all that yelling, she told her brother. Actually, Susie Matchstick has a reason to shout this time, Ben spoke, pointing a rocky finger at the television. When Ben did, Susan looked at it, Reed walking in and joining them, doing the same thing a moment later. Thus all the Fantastic Four focused their attention on what was playing on the television, which was breaking news and a special report, all focused on the nation of Latveria, a country which was being reported had been in a revolutionary war for the past year, to do away with their monarch, royal family, and top government officials who had been war crimes against their people for decades. But now all of that was over, since the revolutionary had at last triumphed over their corrupt regime and had put together a new government. They had even named a new king to lead their people, one Susan and the others recognized immediately, Victor. Upon learning all this, everyone became utterly shocked, Susan especially. At least her mind wasn't focused on her kiss with Victor any longer. Triskelion, Washington, D.C. Sitting behind the desk in his office, a bald African-American man with an eye patch watched the special new report being done on Latvia on the flat-screen television in front of him. The man in question being one Nicholas J. Fury, the current director of the Strategic Homeland Intervention and Espionage Logistics Division, or SHIELD for short. Insert image of MCU Nick Fury here. A world-sanctioned peacekeeping force that deals with all manner of threats. As Fury silently watched the report, his mind was racing, going over all the information he had on Latvia. Since the World Security Council and the United Nations had tasked Fury and SHIELD to do a threat assessment on the country, now that their regime had changed, it was nothing SHIELD or Fury hadn't done before. But what made this different for Fury was one single thing: Victor Von Doom. After learning about him, Fury couldn't help but raise the threat level of Latvia, because in his long career as an intelligence operative, Fury had seen several men like Doom, which is why he knew just how dangerous they truly were of capable of becoming. Like in Victor's case already, Fury had managed to learn he not only created the robots that had helped the revolutionaries overthrow the country's former regime, but he did it all under the radar, without anyone learning of his actions until after the fact. Just from this one action, Fury knew he needed to tread lightly when it came Latvia new king, lest he caused the man to send the world into chaos. Simkaria, on Iona. Sitting in his private office, the current king of Simkaria, Stefan, watched the special news report about Latvia playing on his television screen, finding it intriguing, especially given that Simkaria and Latvia have been allies for decades. Yet seeing the contents of the special news report, Stefan now understood why that alliance had diminished in recent times. But now with this Victor Von Doom in charge, maybe our relationship can be repaired, Stefan thought. After doing so, he turned his gaze to the only other person in his office, a female with silver hair and eyes. Her name, Silvija Sablinova, otherwise known by her codename Silver Sable. Insert image of Silvija Sablinova / Silver Sable here. A special agent for the Simkarian government and a close confidant and friend of Stefan's. Sable, what do you think of Latvia and this man they now call their king, Doom? Stefan asked. Unsure, my king. I would need to go there and assess not only Latvia itself but this man Doom with my own eyes to give you an accurate assessment. Sable easily replied. Understood, Stefan said. So then, let us get you into a position to do just that. Thus Simkaria and Silver Sable set their sights on Latvia and Victor. Undisclosed location. Sitting alone in a room, a figure cloaked by shadows stared at the television in front of them, playing the special news report about Latvia. I see, the person mused, revealing their voice, which was male. Seems I need to strange strategies, he mused. For the glory of Hydra, he finished, continuing to silently watch the special news report after that. Chapter 19, To Hell. January 10, 2007. Latvia. Victor, POV. Slap slap slap. Sitting comfortably in a special-made cushioned chair, created by yours truly, I sat in the center of a group of monitors. Supported by beams, they surrounded me in a dome shape from all 360 degrees. Each of the monitors displaying different pieces of information from all across the world. The device itself modeled after the one Doom created in the mainstream comics, during his time with those mystic monks in the Himalayan mountains, which allowed him to monitor all radio, television, satellite, and internet transmissions no matter where they originated from, remaining completely undetectable as he did. And seeing as it worked out so well for that Doom, I decided I should have one as well. Since I subscribe to the age-old saying, knowledge is power. The more I know, the better off I am. For no one is going to get the drop on me. Slap slap slap. Getting out of my thoughts, I turned my attention to the person seeking it. Lucia, who right now is enjoying herself riding my 9-inch long pole, while pressing her boobs in my face, which is bringing forth my own enjoyment seeing her actions. Flushed cheeks and a hungry expression on her face, Lucia continued going up and down on my cock, her tight pussy eagerly swallowing it up. But that's to be expected, considering with all the work we've been doing ever since we arrived in Latvia, she hasn't gotten nearly enough doses of vitamin D. Time to rectify that. Moving my hands to her ass, I gave her cheeks a light slap before I began thrusting my own hips, burying my face on her tits. Yes. Oh yes, Victor, Lucia cried, enjoying what I was doing. So I did it some more. Picking up my speed, I began plowing Lucia like she wanted, feeling myself build and build until my heat exploded, leading me to filling up Lucia with a large dose of vitamin D. Yes, she exclaimed, appreciating the shot I just gave her. All in a day's work for a doctor such as I. Once Lucia recovered, I gave her several more shots of vitamin D before our checkup session ended. As it did, I gently lifted her off me and then used some magic to clean us up. Once I finished this, I sat back down and held Lucia in my arms, giving her some after-sex cuddling. While we did so, I began reviewing the new information in my head I had learned from the monitors earlier. First, the United Nations is seeing fit to send an investigation team here to Latvia. That's fine, because no matter what they do, their actions won't interrupt my plans. Plus it works in Latvia's favor to play nice with the UN. For now, that is. Second, it seems the UN and the World Security Council have ordered SHIELD to do a threat assessment on Latvia and more specifically me. Once again, that's fine, since in the long run it changes nothing. Third, it looks like Simkaria wants to re-establish the strong diplomatic ties it once had with Latvia, which Vladimir and his regime basically ruined while they were in power. To that end they are soon going to request for a diplomatic party to come and visit my country, led by none other than Sylvia Sablinova aka Silver Sable, one of the Marvel Universe's most badass non-superpowered femme fatale, as well as one of the many women Peter Parker / Spider-Man could never close the deal with. Oh, and speaking of old Pete, I have decided I'm going to help the kid out. Partly because Spider-Man is one of my favorite heroes, and partly because I don't want his life to turn into the dumpster fire it was in the comics. Because seriously, Spider-Man life was basically just one shit show after another. In part because of those words Uncle Ben spoke to Peter before he died. The man has no idea how much his final piece of advice acted as chains to weigh his nephew down. If not for that, Peter might have become like Tony Stark, a rich and beloved public hero. Instead, he usually ended up worse for wear, and working for Jameson. Ugh, don't even get me started on that man. I have no idea how Peter worked for that man when he verbally abused him all the time. Unless Spider-Man was slightly masochistic? Food for thought. But back to the main point. I'll keep an eye out for Spider-Man, and once he comes along he'll gain a mentor and friend in me. Fourth, elements of Latvia, neighboring country to the northwest Sokovia, seem to be planning to infiltrate and gather intelligence on the state of our country, in preparation for an invasion. I have no idea why yet, but I will soon find out. For no one shall conquer this country now that I rule. Instead it will be the other way around. Looks like I just found my next target. Sokovia better get ready, because doom is coming for it. I reviewed the rest of the information in quick succession. Once I did, I picked Lucia up and we exited the monitoring dome and left the room it was in, which is located in Castle Doom. The renovation and repairs of my new home having been completed a week ago. Construction goes after when you have a tireless robotic army under your command after all. Taking Lucia to one of the many guest rooms, I placed her in a bed. I then left to go and check on Kristoff in his personal room. Arriving, I found him sound asleep, a smile on his face. Seeing this, I smiled as well, leaving him for my next destination, my personal lab, which was located in one of the castle many cellars which I had converted for my own use. Reaching my lab, I headed inside, enjoying the sight of my advanced equipment and bookshelves stocked with magical tomes. Image here. For my lab combines both sorcery and science, but tonight I am focusing on the latter. Summing my armor around myself, I walked to the spell circle I had drawn on the floor in the center of the room. Reaching it, I moved the dead center of it. I then summoned several magical circles in the air around me and began chanting, pouring my magical energy into the spell circle on the floor. When I did, the circle started to shine in a blood-red circle and leak a blood-colored mist. Despite this, I continued with my actions, until the spell circle was filled with enough magical energy and activated. When it did, I was engulfed in a swirling vortex of blood-red mist. As it died down, I found myself in the dimension called Hell. As fire burned all around me and human skulls littered almost every inch of the ground as far as my eyes could see, I paid no attention to that, instead keeping my focus on the being sitting on the throne before me, the ruler of this land and the bastard who currently has my mother Cynthia Von Doom soul, Mephisto. Insert image of Mephisto here. His eyes on me, he put a wide grin on his face. Why, hello there, traveler, and what can I, Mephisto, do for you today? He asked, his voice sounding like a nail scratching a chalkboard. My name is Victor Werner Von Doom, I spoke, Mephisto's smile getting even bigger when I did. Cynthia Von Doom, little boy all grown up. Now this is a surprise, but certainly not an unwelcome one. Mephisto said. Yes, I'm sure, I replied. But let's cut to the chase, Mephisto. I have come here today to bargain for my mother's soul. So, let's see if we can make a deal, I said. Thus I began negotiations to make a deal with the literal devil. Chapter 20, and back. Third person, POV. A deal, you say? Mephisto asked Victor. Yes, that's right. Did I stutter? Victor replied. Well, color me surprised once more. This day is just full of surprises, Mephisto said, the devilish grin on his face getting bigger. Yes. Now if you are done getting off, let us get down to it. Victor said. Tell me, what will it take for you to return my mother's soul to me, and repair the damage you have inflicted upon it since it came into your possession? That is the question, isn't it? Mephisto replied, lazily tapping a finger from his left hand against his chin, pretending to be deep in thought, as if finding it hard to reply to Victor's question. But Victor himself knew what Mephisto was doing at the moment was all an act, likely meant to infuriate him or throw him off guard. And if he was the original Dr. Doom, that might have worked. But on the Doom standing in front of him, not so much. So completely and utterly calm, Victor waited for Mephisto to respond to him, the demonic being taking a whole 5 minutes to do so. I've got it. How about this? You and I fight, and if you win, I'll return your mommy to you good as new, Mephisto said. But should you lose, your people that you now rule over will come to hate you and see you as a monster. And since I am such a generous guy, I'll make this deal a yearly thing. So, what do you say? No, Victor immediately replied, erasing the grin on Mephisto's face. No, that's right, no. Once more did I stutter. Victor replied. I thought you came here to save your mother. Mephisto said. I did. Victor replied. But I can't put that over the responsibility I have to those I now lead. Besides, my mother would never forgive me if she learned I saved her just at the expense of your homeland. So once more, demon, no deal. He spoke. Victor not going to budge, no matter how much he wanted to save his mother, since he has already said many times he is not going to make the mistakes of the original Doom. who ended up taking Mephisto deal that he just rejected. Honestly, Victor has no idea why Doom in the comics did this. Unless he had a sort of mother complex? Yeah, no. Victor is not touching that with any sort of pole. Moving on. Mephisto had begun to think and began getting a little serious. Since he was sure Victor would take the deal he came up with, he didn't expect him to reject it so easily. Now things are getting truly interesting. Mephisto thought. I hear you, Victor, but your rejection means we'll have to come up with another deal. Since I can't just return Cynthia's soul to you for nothing, I have a reputation to uphold after all. Mephisto said. Right. Victor replied. In that case I have a deal to offer you. Oh, I'm listening, Mephisto said, curious to see what kind of deal Victor had managed to come up with. In exchange for you healing my mother's soul and returning it to me exactly as it was when you obtained it, and you swearing to never interfere with us directly or indirectly ever again, unless we choose to deal with you, then I am prepared to collect 3 souls and give them to you to do what you will. And these won't just be any old souls either, but the souls of violent and horrid individuals that I'm sure you would delight in tormenting for the rest of eternity. Victor spoke. Mephisto liking what he heard. My, that sounds very wonderful. Mephisto spoke. Though my standards are very high, Victor. Even if you bring me a soul, that doesn't mean I'll accept it as one of the 3 mentioned in this deal you are offering me. Please. I would never be so worthless as to not bring you souls you would like. In fact, here is a little taste and a testament to my skills. Victor spoke. He then snapped his left fingers. A moment after he did the spell circle under Victor's feet, which he had used to travel to Mephisto dimension, and acted as a barrier of protection against the demonic being himself, glowed. Then a second after it did, Vladimir Fortunov appeared inside of the spell circle, wearing full body chains. But he didn't stay there for even a minute before Victor used his left foot to kick him out of it, applying enough force with his kick for Vladimir to land right in front of Mephisto's throne. Once this happened, Mephisto looked into Vladimir's eyes and literally began peering into his very soul. Yes. Oh yes. Mephisto began speaking and moaning. The more he examined Vladimir's soul. Oh fuck yes. Mephisto shouted. Once he did, he turned his gaze away from Vladimir and to Victor. Victor, my boy, to think you would bring me such a tasty little morsel like this one. Seems you aren't just all talk. But of course. Victor replied. So then, Mephisto, do we have ourselves a deal? He asked. Oh yes, we do. Mephisto replied. Then the moment the demonic being did the magic of both Victor and he reacted, sealing the contract between them, and making sure if either one broke it they would suffer dire consequences. Feeling this, Victor smiled beneath his mask. Since this entire meeting had gone exactly as he planned, of course he knew there was a chance Mephisto would refuse to accept his deal, but Victor was willing to take that risk, which has paid off in the end. Now he'll be able to save his mother without giving up the love of his people like the original Dr. Doom did. Perfect. A pleasure doing business with you, Mephisto. Victor spoke up. Once the deal between them was sealed. Same to you. Now then, off with you. I have a new toy to break in, Mephisto said. The demonic being then licked his lips before snapping his fingers. A second after he did, Vladimir found himself completely naked, his butt facing outward, his wrists and ankles bound with leather straps that held him on an X-shaped wooden post. Next to said post was a table filled with sexual tools. A ball gag, a riding crop, a whip, some candles, etc. No, no, Vladimir shouted at the top of his lungs. His fear beyond anything he has ever felt once he realized the situation he was in. Bad boy, when you scream you're supposed to call out yes. Mephisto said, standing up from his throne. Looks like you need some training, he said. Mephisto then began approaching Vladimir. Seeing this, Victor poured his magic into his magic circle and began his return trip home. Since he did not need the image of Vladimir taking Mephisto back shots in his head, that was a scenario too terrifying to even imagine. Yet it was happening. Victor would almost feel bad for Vladimir. Almost. If the man wasn't getting exactly what he deserved. Now he going to see how it felt to be someone else's bitch for all of eternity. A fitting end for such a king.